Live. Okay.
All right, so this is the Finance Committee. This is live November. Hi, we're meeting. Hi there, the mics are on.
You're done. I need
I'll
somebody
wait.
with it here. Okay.
November 12th, it's the Finance Committee meeting. Board members in attendance are Kyle McKessie, Denise Brooks, Gerald Grupp, Wendy Thomas, and Board Member-elect Mike Thorwart. They're members of the public here. Rick Abramson is in the building, and this part of the meeting is going to be run by Bob Reinhardt. Go ahead, Bob. Is he? And so is Gail, and so is Doug.
And Matt. Other two guests.
And Matt Frederickson.
Introduce themselves.
Start the meeting.
Steve McGill and
The
somebody.
beginning of this meeting is going to be a review of information and an update of information that I shared with you back in August 27th, and it's relating to fund balance and our results of operations from the end of last year. The results of this meeting need to be direction that you give us to determine what we want to do with our year-end balances, fund balance, moving money, with operating transfers and things such as that. I would like to have a motion that gets approved next week, so it directs us what to do with our financials. Understand that if you remember the SEC rulings and everything, that we need to have our financials published and out publicly before the beginning of the new year. So for us to get everything done, the auditors are now waiting for us. They have our financial statements without the adjustments that we're going to make based on this meeting. So I really need direction tonight to move forward. We can't put it off at all. So let's go from there. You want to switch? Go for it. Okay. So the results of operations, we're going to go over the general fund operations again. This is going to be very similar, but not as much detail as it was August 27th, but it's going to show you where we are with the general fund and an explanation. A new issue that I'm going to bring up is the self-insurance fund, and you're going to see the inner workings of the self-insurance fund, and I'm going to explain some things to you so you can understand what's happening there. So that's something that's new. The fund balance actuals, I will tell you, I'm going to bring out that slide that got me in a lot of trouble last meeting, and I am going to actually have a cheat sheet that I'm going to hand out and give you descriptions of changes between what I tried to do and what they are now, and I hope it works better. But it's important that you understand that. Then Mr. Taylor is going to talk about annual commitment to our facilities and summer projects and things such as that. The results of that, I really want to come up where we decide what type of operating transfers we would like to make from the general fund, either in the capital reserve fund or the self-insurance fund. Okay. This is very familiar. It's the slide, but it's been updated from last year. August 27th. And you will see that the bottom line and what everyone is looking at is the middle of the page, the $6,041,871. That has been reduced about $380,000, $400,000, and it's really due. The biggest thing is the IU reconciliation that we weren't aware of, that we owe the IU $300,000 and some thousand, and that's the biggest difference between what fund balance is available and from August 27th to today. Again, I want to show you that our revenues came in 1.4% within the budget at $212 million. Our expenditures came in 2.33% less. If you remember that, I went over all of the salaries and why that all happened and everything, because that's a little higher than it usually is. I want to make sure you remember the extraordinary item. That is the one-time payment from Lockheed Martin for back taxes. So that is something that will not reoccur again, the $3,500,000. And that brings you to the total of the $6 million of fund balance that has been generated by the end of this year's operations. Go ahead. Okay. Below that is the major revenue variances, and it's the same as we looked at before. There's no material adjustments since August 27th at all. and that's really why our revenues exceeded. Yes,
So can I ask a question? On the slide? So in the 6 million, that was, revenues in excess of expenditures before after extraordinary items, really.
yes,
We had allotted fund balance to be spent in this budget year. Some of it was PSERS and some of it was general.
yes.
Does that use either of those two categories?
In my presentation, I am going to be showing you that I have used the PSERS amount.
Okay.
Yes, I have used PSERS amount, and you're going to see that, and we're going to get to that slide. That's that slide that got me in trouble.
So we didn't use the buffer amounts, the other fund balance that was put in the budget. That didn't ever get used.
That was the undesignated fund
Yes.
balance, yes. And that has not been used because I use a calculation to say we go up to 5% max, and since there's money there, I did not. So Wendy's pointing out that there's a injustice to the way this has
No,
been
it's
done.
just, we didn't
Yes.
choose to do it the same way.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay? Revenues, I went in a lot more detail about earned income taxes and everything else there, but that's very consistent with the August 27th. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with that unless anyone has a question. Again, this is the variances between,
I'm sorry, so this is final. Are these final numbers? I mean, like, because this IU reconciliation, is there anything else outstanding to finalize the?
it's my belief, unless the auditors throw something at us, that this are the
This
final
is-
numbers,
this is-
yes. Other
So
than
is that-
what you authorize us to do if we do operating transfers and things like that. And we'll move fund balance around based on what you guys tell us to do. So now, these are really your financial statements to give me direction and say, Bob, we want you to do this, this, and this now.
No, I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't something like the IU reconciliation or something else that maybe is still
That was
looming.
very early for the IU to give us those numbers.
Oh, okay.
It's very unusual for we got that early.
I don't expect anything.
Okay.
I'm not aware of anything,
That's
but
fine. So
I'll notify
nothing-
you if something happens.
Right, but
Yes.
nothing substantial should
No.
change from this.
No. This is much more, August, I told you some changes could be made. Now I'm saying, and I talked to the auditor today, he doesn't see anything, we don't see anything, so. So you'll see, these numbers are practically the same. I think there's some small adjustments into the actuals in salaries and benefits, but you'll see, if you go back to the last report, you'll see that this is the number that really went up by $300 and some thousand, because that's where it was posted, the IU reconciliations posted to that category.
Can you remind me, the unemployment is because we pay actuals. We don't, it's not insurance. We actually pay.
We pay actual claims, yes.
Okay.
We are, it's almost like we're self-insured.
I just,
Yes.
I was looking to understand why we would have that much divergence.
Yes.
Because in the private industry, it's not that way, and you wouldn't expect to see.
You have your experience rate and you get charged that based on payroll, yep, I
Okay, so-
agree.
But we actually just pay the claims
Yes.
directly. Okay.
Okay. Okay, this is the sheet that got me in trouble last time, so Gail's gonna pass this around so you have a cheat sheet here. And what I want to tell you is, just remember, this is audited financial statements. June 30th, 2014 is the end of what our financial statements said last year. This here is just the beginning. This is what you're going to be directing me in what to do. And I can, you're close to your eye. So this is where we're going to move from here. But what I'm doing now is, it really confused the issues about how I changed numbers from 2014 to 2015. So what I've done is I've given you a page with the same columns in, but I've added the adjustment and why there's an adjustment to that. So let's look at the top one, prepaid items.
Do you have this online as well?
I just have it for tonight, but I can put it online.
No, because it was just people watching
Yes,
on tape won't have this. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I didn't even
Well, the
think of
numbers
that.
are, I mean, the only thing that's different is this
It's
column. So
justification.
just speak,
Yes.
just say it out loud if anybody's
Yes.
watching at home.
Prepaid items, as you will see, Last year is $1.3 million. This year, it's only $3,696. Last year, we paid our insurance premiums early, so we reserved that as a unexpendable amount. This year, we didn't pay them until July, so that's why it's not there. So these numbers have been adjusted because actual things occurred this year. So I can't put the same number in as last year for you guys to move. It's actual events have occurred to change the number. Okay. Same thing happened with inventories. Employer retirement stabilization. You will see that last year it was 5.9 million. Now it's down to 3.6. And the reason it's been adjusted is because that is the amount we have in the 2015-16 budget. We're using that fund balance to balance our budget. So you see, those are the reasons why these numbers have changed.
The other thing that says to me is, although we have a $6 million surplus.
Yes.
Is that an okay word to use?
Yep.
Okay, surplus, we took 2.2 out of fund balance in order to get that. So one of the things as we get to the end, or whenever we're ready to talk about where we're putting money, is do we put that money back as if we never took it? Because frankly, we didn't have, although we had to plan to take it because of how the budget looked, we didn't actually have to use it. And frankly,
Wendy's
that's
perfect
my
on that
approach.
because-
But I think it's important because we actually put many categories out of the fund balance and we didn't move all of them into the 6 million. So you kind of, for me, I need to understand which ones moved and which ones didn't in case I want to put it back. So like Piecers, I wouldn't mind putting back, but I don't want to put back rate stabilization. So,
Yes.
everybody will have their own opinions.
Yes, I wanted to say that the only one that I believe doesn't get taken out for good is the unassigned, because that is based on the calculation down here. Okay, does everyone see that? And again, this is the beginning. Now you guys can say, Bob, I don't like that employer retirement stabilization at 3.6. I want it to be $7 million, and I'd put money back there then. So that's what you'd be doing and telling me and giving me direction. And that's what you guys would be voting on then on next Thursday night to say, this is how I want our fund balances to appear. Do you understand what I'm saying there? So this is okay now. You guys understand this better than last time when I
This is helpful.
really crashed and burned. I did. Okay. Oh, wait. You have a question, Wendy? Now let's go to the next page. Okay, now this is your beginning point. So this is really your decision page, if you will. This is the far right column, and now it's just showing up alone. But now what I am showing you is the results of operations created 6,041,871, and because of the movements of fund balance, that created an additional $989,000. If you go back to the previous page, you will see that the fund balance, because of the movements that I have in there right now, went from 29,046 to 28,057. Do you see that? So now in combination, I can't even see the number up there now.
$7,031,453.
That's the number that needs to be distributed between the things that we're going to do. And we should come back to this page then when we start saying, okay, this is what we want to do. And you're going to see that I'm going to give you the first recommendation. Okay, go ahead next. Now we're moving from the general fund. We stopped talking about the general fund. We're talking about the self-insurance fund. And just, I want to make sure you remember, this fund is set up for the self-insurance activities that include our prescription drug and dental insurance. Dental I've excluded from this when I do the presentation because that's really an in and out here and it's just going to make the numbers different. I want to focus totally on healthcare and prescription drug. Okay? You're going to see that on the next slide. Revenues in this fund are transfers of resources from the general fund, meaning that In general, I will say employees pay 16% of the premium. The district pays 84% of the premium. We charge that off into the general fund and say, this is the healthcare cost in the general fund, and we transfer it over here. So the things that are charged off the general fund are calculations based on the premiums, developed premiums that we've done. Do you guys understand that? Okay. The other thing that happens is we go through the payroll deductions, and the employees now pay their 16% or whatever percentage they pay, and that comes into this fund also. Then finally, payments are made from retirees and COBRA participants. So that's all your revenues. That's your sources of resources that come in here. And all expenses associated with our self-insurance activities are accounted for in this fund. Okay? This is done because we have a contractual responsibility with our employees, the school district, for a proportionate share of the costs. So putting it in the general fund mixes it all up, and our fund balance would go up in a good year, our fund balance would go down in a bad year. Here, we're isolating these transactions so you can see the activities. Go ahead. So as I look at this, your revenues are the employer share of the premium, employee share of the premium, retiree premiums, COBRA premiums. I have that amount subtotaled there because it's important as we go through this process. But those are the resources. Also, we collect a 2% administrative fee. That's the $30,000. So in total, we had $23,773,000 coming into this fund. That is the dental premiums came in also, about $1.6 million. There's $1.6 million in additional money coming in and 1.6 of additional money coming out. Dental is a fully insured program at this point, but we put it all together. I believe it's probably going to go self-insured, but at some point. But that is just an in and an out, and it would just complicate this if I included it in there. Okay, healthcare claims and associated costs, 18.2, prescription cost, stop loss premiums, consultant fees, 60,000. Taxes and fees. Taxes and fees are a lot related to the Affordable Care Act that we didn't pay in the past, but it's $239,000 now that we're paying for that. So if you see the results of this operation, it shows that this year we actually ran in a deficit. When I talk about a deficit, it's more of a cash flow issue. Every year we develop premiums to break even with this. This year, I am going to show you why this was a deficit in this year. And what I believe I'm going to show you is that although you may think it's an expense side issue, you're going to see that no, it's a revenue side issue. A portion of this is a revenue side issue. So I want to make sure you understand that before we get into it and see the numbers, and that's what I'm going to show. I will tell you that we had $436,000 deficit last year. That's not a big number when you look at the numbers here. And I got to tell you, this isn't even a huge number, but I and the auditors don't want this to continue to be in a deficit. No matter what happens, the general fund is responsible for this fund. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to ask you to transfer $1 million over here just for this. This is a cash flow issue that should be resolved again with the premiums next year and having good years in progression.
Let me just add one thing here, because some people don't have the context for this, not in the room, but someone watching this, which is, as you said, given the volume of what the numbers are, that number is not dramatic. We have secondary insurance for catastrophic,
yes.
that should our expenses have exceeded it in a great way, there is an insurance that would have picked it up. So this could never, I say never, it could, if it was $5 million, probably we were already kicked over into the secondary insurance that's covering it, because it would be beyond our
And I will tell you, we had about 5 or 6 large claims that we've gotten stop loss insurance from this year. So it's already kicked in and stopped things from accumulating.
Things are in the neighborhood of $24 million. So our aggregate is probably 125% of expected claims. So we'd have to have like $30 million. I did not. So right. and individual people, individual claimants, if they hit a great deal, I think
It's
there's
250.
250.
250,000.
250,000. But this is in my opinion, an estimating error. So
Right.
one of the things that happens is the broker and the Blue Cross sit down and they look at the claims and then they guess what the claims are going to be and they develop fully insured premiums off of that. And Bob, you can go on, because it has to do with more than estimated claims. It has to do with what plan people are going to be in. And so between the 3 different categories, they were probably a percent off in each category, so it's roughly a 3% error. And that caused a 3%. Could have been 3% to the good, could have been big.
My point was simply that if someone looking at this, absent knowing that we
Worried
had,
about catastrophic.
exactly, absent knowing that, they could say, geez, could we be on the hook for some huge number? And the answer is
No.
huge? No. Big, yes, but huge? No.
But the fund balance for the self-insured has been, what, like $4 million?
In the general fund, we
Yeah.
have,
Okay, so, but wouldn't the logic then apply to figure out where the stop loss would fall and to maintain, like, what, is that 4 million far from where the stop loss would kick in? Do you understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
24.
right now, we
24.
don't have aggregate stop
Or
loss. We have
4 to
individual
6.
stop loss at $250,000
Oh, per,
claim, yes.
okay.
So anything over $250,000, they pay 100% of it. We stop paying, it's even prescription drugs included in that and everything. So we get 100% reimbursement back for that. I believe, just based on my knowledge, 3.9 million is sufficient for any type of problem we'd have with this fund. I don't believe we need more money in that area.
Okay, so
But that is
basically-
all sitting in the general fund right now.
Right,
Yeah.
I see, but basically what you're saying is to replenish that to get us back to.
We should be running even. It should
Right,
be
shouldn't
self,
right.
it should be
It should-
self-sufficient and
Yes.
break even for us.
And I want you to know that the general fund's responsible for this fund no matter what. So I don't want you to think that it's
Right,
our,
it's
it's
not-
our
Separate
insurance
account.
company, yes. So
Bob, how often is the premium recalculated? Is it annually?
yes, annually,
And this
You can only be done once.
this catastrophic event, is that it's on a personal basis, like $250,000?
yes,
Is that
Both.
per year, per event,
per year,
per year?
yes.
Isn't it both though? Don't we have it at 2 levels? We have it at individual and then we have it at aggregate.
No, we don't have it in aggregate. We
We
don't
don't
have it.
aggregate at
No.
125?
125% of loss
Yeah,
experience.
we don't. We could put that on again. It's
We
going to
did.
cost us, I think,
Yeah.
We did.
well, I know we don't have it now.
All right, let's explore that
Okay. I can definitely do that.
because I'm glad for the plan, but I think we, at least Wendy and I assumed,
Well, when the first year we did this, we definitely had a plan at this magnitude, they may not write it. Because you're stopping individual people, you might statistically not be able to hit 125 without, 80% of your people hitting the two. I don't know.
right.
So the plan may be of a magnitude where they won't write it because it doesn't make any mathematical sense. I don't know that, but we did the first year. We had specific and aggregate stop loss.
Okay. I'm certain of it because I remember all the calculations and all that.
3.5 million.
Of
The
the
3.5
3.9,
million.
at least what we have in savings as our own buffer, was, and I just asked Bob about this, 2 years ago, it was about $1 million more than was recommended. So it was just the extra comfort zone for us. And I said to him, as we look at claims going up, should we increase that buffer? All the feedback so far is that we're in fine shape, but being a conservative-minded group and not wanting to have risk, I don't, overfunded sounds like it's a bad thing, I don't mean it that way, I just meant comfort zone wise. So it's something to consider, we could,
How much
as
does
claims
that
go
cost?
up.
I mean, assuming that do you know what we paid for that before?
Aggregate?
Yeah.
I think, well, we pay 483,000 for specific. I think aggregate was probably another $60,000. It isn't a huge amount of money because so many claims would have to hit the individual before you'd ever get to aggregate, that if you have individual, aggregate's going to be cheap.
So aggregates usually written at 125% 6 million. So we'd have to have 6 million,
Yeah.
divided by 250,000 for in each 25 people hit.
Understand, one or two huge claims that could be $1 million claims is not going to hurt you, because at 250,000, you're getting all of it paid. So you're going to have a lot of people hitting
The average is
200,000,
if you have that many.
225
250,000.
out of
And
the,
if you-
statistically out of 11.
It would have to be a catastrophic event, in which case we have other insurance, which would be covering it as a catastrophic event because it would be caused by something.
I would rather have insurance people answer all these questions,
No, I
but
just,
yeah. Yeah. But in my mind, I'm just,
Well, no, it's all important that,
Yes.
people, we have people who aren't familiar with it, so it's why it's good that we discuss it.
Where does the insurance income come in, like in the revenues? It's not in the.
Right now, there's no income, so if you'd
What
like
do you
to
mean?
participate in that.
For the stop loss.
when we get
Insurance
claims,
coverage.
it is netted out against the healthcare claims because it's
Okay.
reducing our healthcare claims. I think we had about $597,000 is in that number. But it's because they're paying you and reimbursing you, it's being netted out. But it's about $597,000 this year. Okay. Okay. I want to make sure you know that there is planning that goes on in regard to this, into this fund. So each year we do premium development. And really what they do is look at what our expected costs are going to be. So down here is our expected costs, and it's a much more detailed report, and I could show you the whole thing and how the trending factors get used and everything else. But this is just the raw numbers of what was expected. The claims were expected about $24.2 million. And then what happened is we put number of contracts and the cost of each contract. So it was expected that we were going to get about $24.5 million in the fund. Okay, so this is your revenues. This is your expenses. If everything was perfect, we would have been over by $283,000. Okay?
By perfect, you mean they estimated the right number of people in each category?
Yes.
At each premium level with each contribution?
Yes, perfect. And please know and look that single for 10/20/70 is $7,800. Why single for PC 5 is $11,000
And they pay 16%.
plus the difference. So you take the 7831 and the difference, the employee paid all of that because this was our base plan. This is our buy-up plan. So they paid 16% plus they paid the difference. So they paid about, what, $3,500 to be in single PC5. You see what I'm saying? Okay. Okay, go ahead, Matt.
One more thing.
Oh, so,
Sorry. Aren't we getting close to that Cadillac tax on some of these?
oh, I think they're telling us, every one of
So
our,
our
Go
new
ahead.
contract, this PC5 plan goes away and another plan is added lower.
Okay.
This was just discussion.
Okay.
and there's language in our new contract saying if we hit the Cadillac tax, we have to renegotiate their benefit levels. So there is language in there and it's going to protect us from that. But Mike, I think we're probably going to hit the Cadillac tax. Okay, I shouldn't have said that, but it seems like there's a lot of plans that will hit the Cadillac tax.
Every candidate running for office has said they're going to eliminate it, so that's,
I hope
Which
so.
office?
every candidate on both sides of the ticket.
Okay.
Except maybe Bernie, I don't know the others.
First name basis.
What I'm showing you here is, this is the planned analysis. So annual premium, like you saw on the first page, the number of contracts, and that would be the premium amount and what it would jump to. And that too is missing there. And I have no idea why. But now actual, this is what actually happened this year. So you will see that we had 28 less contracts, and you'll also see a lot of people migrated from the higher costing plan up to the lower costing plan. So our revenues came in about $864,000 less than what we anticipated because of the movement of people from plan to plan. It's a difference of 3.52%. Okay? So that's where it shows, and I want to make sure you know there's planning here. And we are going to learn from this to understand how we should have done it differently. Gallagher has been very much involved in this with me. In fact, they've written a 3-page paper on all this stuff that I've done here.
How do you have a fraction of a plan? Is it they change plans at some life event?
There are people coming and going.
Okay.
So if someone's here for a third of the year, that would be 0.33. Those are annual equivalencies. Okay. And I want to show you that when you look at the expenses, the planned expenses compared to the actual, they're off by 1.03%. Gallagher has written, and this is what they have written about that, so that high claimants were a large contributing factor to the overall medical and prescription drug expenditure for 2014-15. Although the district has stop loss coverage which reimburses costs above $250,000 for one member, the district is responsible for all dollars under that point. As a result, in general, it is better for the district to have one extremely high dollar claimant than a large number of high claimants around the stop loss threshold. Unfortunately, in 2014-15, there were 19 high claimants that exceeded $100,000. High claimants represented approximately 23% of the total medical expenditure. So what they're saying is we had a bad year and this is how bad it got. It's only 1%. You see what I'm saying? That's off. So
Wait,
it
did
is,
you just say 19 claimants
we're
represented
over
25% of the cost?
$100,000. Yeah, and they,
But
yes,
if people had longer predicted, we would have been $200,000 in the good. Nothing to do with claimants.
right.
So that's not why we have this problem, in my opinion. I mean, if their prediction was off, their original prediction was where people would end up. We would have had $283,000. We would have been fine with the claims that we actually
Yes.
had.
You're
So
right,
it's not the actual claims
right.
that were predicted wrong. It's that the predicted of where people would end up in which plan.
Their participation
Yes.
they didn't
That's what
participate
moved
as
the numbers.
predicted.
Yes,
Right.
I understand what you're saying.
So, that being said, we had some very, very good years, and we had a not as,
Awesome,
As-
yes,
I would say we had probably an average year last year. So, yes, that would contribute, but neither here nor there, the prediction for where people would be would have brought in enough revenue to cover the claims.
yes,
The interesting perspective on this is the stop loss is the same under both plans. Where it kicks in is the same. So someone who was paying a heavier premium before and went to, what was the stop loss, 250 on an individual? Who went into that stop loss, the amount of money, the amount of money simply collected went down. The cost to the district really was the same
right,
because the stop loss kicks in.
Well, so they have a plan differential though on actual use. So they paid more in employee contributions, but they paid less when they used the plan. So the cost to the cost to the district actually might not have been the same. That's all. So, but it's
Marginally
marginal.
different, yes,
Marginal,
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm getting into some detail here, but you understand the essence of it, and I will tell you that this is something that we'll be doing from year to year to year to year, and looking at it and making sure that this is only going to make us better.
But the detail is absolutely necessary because this is not going away. So
Okay.
to understand what it is,
Well, the predictive model that I think for one thing is we need to be better at estimating where people are gonna be and what percentage they're gonna pay. And I think that conversation is, I understand it's happening with Gallagher. But the other thing is, I agree with Bob, I think we need to put a buffer in that fund. If the modeling is better, we won't use it, it'll just sit there, but I think actually in this fund, we should transfer the money to the bottom. I agree with his recommendation on that. It is small in the percentages, the differential, but we don't want to be in a negative and waiting for that money to catch up.
Okay. This is where the rubber hits the road, and what I want to do is talk about this, and then I want Doug to do his presentation, and I want to come back to this. At June 30th, there was $731,000. In the handout that you have there, please change that number. You're going to see the top number isn't that. and I found that late on that I had to make some changes, and I never changed that part until later on, and I apologize. Think about it. You need to commit other general fund committed fund balance designations, and we're going to go back to that slide, and that's where your starting point is, and you start moving our money around. You need to determine the amount you'd like to move in for operating transfers to the capital reserve and the self-insurance. My proposal, this is my proposal, and if you would say yes to this, I would be very happy. $1 million into the self-insurance fund to reduce that deficit. 631,453 transferred to the capital reserve fund. And now let's go to Doug's presentation. We'll go back to that, but that's what my recommendation is.
So what I want to touch base on tonight with are a series of things that's relative to capital planning. And right now, as you're aware, we currently allocate $3 million a year for capital projects. And that $3 million is total project cost. So from that $3 million, I remove soft costs and some other items to get to the projects that we need. When you look at kind of an industry standard recommendation for capital planning, if you take the square footage times, at this time, about $200 a square foot, and you were to take 1 to 2% of that number, we're looking at a range of 3.6 to 7.2 million per year to maintain the buildings throughout the district that we have. And I'll give you an example of what we're planning this coming year and how that relates to the number that's being suggested. So those recommendations are referring to construction costs, not the professional fees, contingencies, and other things that are outside of it. So what I want to look at tonight is I have a list of projects as you look out 5 years and the cost of some of those projects that are coming down the road and making sure that we're planning appropriately. So I don't want to lead us off a cliff in 5 years if we have a series of large, sizable projects coming down the road that in a given year could pile on top of each other and far exceed the $3 million. So this is an example of what we're proposing for this year based on the $3 million allocation, okay? We have, if I say 3.6 to 7.2 million, the actual construction costs of the projects this year are about 1.8 and 5 million, or 500,000, if you approve the projects for this coming summer. The 1.8 million are those costs, are the costs associated with projects that are directly related to preventative maintenance types of things. The $500,000 is for the removal of modulars, for the addition of wireless and things like that, that aren't really addressing the needs of the building, while they're the needs of the district, but they're not addressing the maintenance needs of the facilities. And then the green is the soft cost associated with these projects, same over here. The bottom line is, as we talked about the last meeting, about $3 million of projects that I'm proposing for this year. However, I see the need for more monies heading down the road because of some of the projects that I'll show you. So I think we need to talk about a plan because we're deferring some projects to reach that, to limit us to the $3 million as we are today. Talk about the budget, talk about the cost to do nothing, and what happens down the road. I'm just trying to avoid spikes in taxes or a big loan somewhere down the road by talking about this early. So when I look at the plan and I look at some of the projects, and we could argue if some of these are viable, if they need to be addressed or not, and I could show you reasons why I think today they should be considered and why I know in 5 years we absolutely have to look into these. The windows at North are fantastic. The honeycomb, they provide historic value to the building, but they also, unfortunately, leak like a sieve. And outside, the concrete, precast or cast-in-place concrete is starting to deteriorate, much like the canopies were. And repairing those is going to be very costly. And we'll have to talk about the options down the road. There's some steel lintels and other pieces of North that fall in that same category. South, Next year, we're looking at coating that roof alone, which is $2 million. Richboro Middle School, depending on where we're heading down the road with that facility, in 2020, we have to look at a roof replacement project there. Hillcrest Elementary School was coated about 5 years ago. It's a membrane roof that was coated with a 10-year product to extend its life. But at the end of that 10 years, the roof's going to become problematic. Welsh Elementary School, we have a lot of problems with the HVAC system there. For whatever reason, when the system was installed, that's a building where we experienced a lot of challenges. I would say today we're not looking at replacing it, but if it continues to be the challenge that it is, we could be looking at that single component of that building. Newtown Elementary School is a coated roof that needs to be addressed around 2021. Controls issues also at Newtown. Roof replacement at Richboro L down the road. Rolling Hills Elementary School, depending on what happens there, looking at a $2 million roof project in 19. Chancellor Center, we do our best to put our monies into the schools and where students are. But this building is in need of some work. This doesn't include the plaster repairs on the ceiling on the 3rd floor, but the roof here is tired. We have water leaks. We have problems. This roof is 150 years old. It's original slate roof. The masonry, if you look around the building, you'll see that it has its challenges as well. A couple projects that over time will need to be addressed. So if you take a look at the total cost of just these projects, now bear in mind, this doesn't include each year when we reach out to the principals and say, hey, what do you need in your building? What do we need to do? Replace some floors. We need to maintain parking lots, crack seals, coatings, the things that we need to also think about. Those aren't in here. Those come up each year. We take a look across the district at how that works. If you add these up with the contingencies, you're at about 26.6 million or 5.3 million per year over the next 5 years. Now, I would say that obviously we wouldn't spend that 5.3 next year. It may be that it's 3 million next year, it's 4 million, it's 7, and the last year with all of those roofs, it's about 10 to 12 million. So we'd have to develop a plan and show the cost of those projects as we go down the road. So the reason that I bring this up is I just want to be sure that as we talk about these projects each summer or each fall, I come into you and I explain what it is I think we need. I've been showing you projects that come to about $3 million because that's been the charge. But as we start to defer more and more projects, I grow nervous that we're not planning for the future. Yes.
So the 5 million you just referred to is on top of the 3 million that we set aside for summer projects?
No, that's
That's
what's
inclusive of the 3 million.
that includes the 3 million.
But it's missing parking lots
Not
and
everything
other
is in there,
things that
so,
we've seen.
right, so correct.
Well, like the 3 million isn't 3 million, but 5 million could be.
Could be 6
6
million, could be, right. So if there's interest in me further developing this, which I would like to do, at least show you how I see the next 5 years based on parking lots we haven't done, some miscellaneous floors, things that I could possibly predict. Put that out there with the estimated cost per year for further discussion down the road. I just want to make sure. This summer, we're looking at the typical $3 million budget that we've always talked about. And tonight, when I move to my piece of this presentation, I want to ask for your knowledge and move forward with documenting those as we have in the past. But this is a piece of the plan that I think requires some further action, and I'm just looking for feedback from the board. And Bob can speak more to the money piece of it.
I have to share with you, it's funny to see the honeycombs on there because when we rebuilt North for $32 million, that was one of the first priorities that was on there. And the building declined it because it gives them the character that they wanted. So maybe those characters are gone, but it is it because at the time we had entertained a glass curtain wall to preserve those for their character.
Exactly what I would suggest if possible, if we're not worried about the historical value, if you will, because repairing those could
It's
be
absurd.
almost the same cost, and you're still gonna repair
At
them
the-
again down the road.
At the time, they saved them, we were trimming back plants that had literally grown through the walls down on the far right-hand side as you come in the building.
Right.
So it's interesting. They should have been gone a while ago. They're also a safety hazard because they're scalable from the outside.
So I'm.
Been up there?
Why everyone's looking at me?
Been up there before?
I have no doubt that we have projects coming up, costs coming up. But as I sit here today, I'm in a place of $3 million a summer. And at least for this fund balance that we have left, I'd like to see it affect the classroom within the buildings. We have spent a lot of time, I've spent a lot of time in this board talking about capital structure, and I certainly don't want to put us in a deficit where we have $10 million 1 year. But for me right now, I want to see some of that money start to get a curriculum specialist, a technology integration person, more than I'm willing to put in the capital budget and have it sit there for the roof we need in 5 years. I want it to affect kids more than that. That's just personally where I am. Personal,
It's
just,
okay, I just,
I
you know,
want the money
being,
to be in the classroom
For
in
me,
a direct impact.
one of the things I struggle with, I hear what you say and I understand what you say. A lot of those expenses are ongoing, regular, anticipated expenses that will be year in, year out.
But $1 million buys you.
I didn't interrupt you,
Not today.
so it's a new day. So I hear what you say about that. My problem is, particularly in light of some of the things that are coming at the state level or being talked about at the state level, I'm concerned. Before I came to this organization, there was deferred maintenance on a bunch of tasks, and it took us a long time to recover from that deferred maintenance. In fact, it took 16 years at the time to get rid of some of the deferred maintenance, which was those trailers. It took a long time. So I think there's a middle ground. I think he gave a range, 3.6 to 7.2. I think there's some look at that. And the other thing I want to look at in that is to say, you, Wendy, have advocated strongly about fund balance. I'm not a huge advocate of taking it for repeat expenses. So looking at it in a controlled manner to protect the investment is paramount. When I looked at his expenses, $2 million for the honeycomb, leave it aside. $4 million of that was for buildings that are contemplated, or maybe $6 million was for buildings that are contemplated for discontinuation. And truthfully, we have to see how if we do choose to discontinue them, do we discontinue ownership of them? So I see putting the money towards it, maybe not the 7, because that seems like a big number, but somewhere in the
We
middle.
only have 3 left. I mean, if we agree that we put $1 million in the insurance and we have $3 million in summer projects we've already been talking about, that leaves $3 million left to decide what to do with, in my thinking. And I don't know how people feel, if there's consensus around it or not, but.
This one?
Isn't the question on the table now, do we want to hear further explanation? Do we want to, I mean, are we?
No, Bob's asking us to put $6 million in capital planning. I mean, that's.
I'm supporting Doug's request, and I will tell you that as we go into the borrowing for the middle schools, we are planning on using fund balance for the years. Remember the hump in the debt service, where we're going to use fund balance because we're not going to be up there yet? Well, there's probably about $7.4 million of fund balance we're getting ready to use. Those years, and I know everyone's going to say you're doom and gloom and stop talking, but those years are going to be lean years, and I'm not sure we're going to be able to talk about $3 million to move over into the capital reserves. So I'm looking at it and saying we have $6 million, $3 million of that is non-reoccurring because it's the Lockheed money. Put it over there. We have 2 summers of capital projects at the most. It isn't like we're putting a lot over there, but we'll at least fund 2 years, but maybe help out Doug for one of the big years if we can move money next year. I'm concerned we're using $6.1 million of fund balance in this year's budget. I'm not sure we're gonna have $3 million next year to do that following year. So that's where I'm coming from with it and my appeal.
So you agree with this approach? That's,
My recommendation was to move to 6.1 million.
To another significant for future spending. I'm
I know you.
I'm gonna be vehemently against it, I'll just put it out. Vehemently.
It's okay that I
want money
recommended
in the
it.
classroom.
Yeah, but the 6 million includes 3 million that we're gonna.
Yeah, I'm good with the 3 million for next summer. I'm good with 3 million
So I
for
just
next
want to
summer.
quick, I mean,
Yeah,
your issue is the additional.
3 million, it is. I'm good with the insurance and the 3 million for next summer.
And an option, of course, is somewhere in between, which I forget who just suggested that, but of course, that's an option. And Wendy, by all means, you know my appreciation for prioritizing the classroom. After all roads do indeed lead to the classroom. That said, as I look at some of what these needs are, not knowing what's going to happen from a master capital planning standpoint, I would ask the board to just seriously consider some level of increase to that 3 million figure. We've been stuck on that 3 million figure. We absolutely have roofs that are coming up. Those are non-negotiables. Some other ones have some level of question mark. 2 of them, Doug used the word could a time or two as he went through the list. So it's not as if those numbers are absolutes or static numbers. But I would encourage the board to strongly consider some level of increase over that $3 million.
The problem becomes, for me, is $110 million on 2 new middle schools. How many of our million if you're gonna propose to add to elementary? I mean, I'm done until I see some resources and significant money spent that affects kids. I'm not spending, I'll have the most beautiful buildings in the world and the crappiest test scores. I'm at my limit. I mean, it's not like we haven't been sealing roofs and doing it. We've been doing maintenance as long as I've been on the board. I can't speak to before that. And I think we should continue to do it. But we have some serious needs in this district.
We do.
Academically. And
Yeah, we do.
And I hear the recurring expense conversation. So you have to fund it for several years. You can't say, I'm gonna let you hire a curriculum coordinator and oh, by the way, next July, don't have any money in the budget for them. We have to fund it for a period of time. And, we've spent a lot of this district's money on capital, as we should, as they are our biggest asset, and we need the classrooms. But to put another financial amount of money aside for roofs we need in 5 years, after we just had a presentation of some of the academic needs that I believe are serious and we need to have, I can't do it.
Can I ask a question as a citizen? So Denise was just explaining to me via text, the reason that we would put money into an air conditioner of a school when not all schools have air conditioning is because.
The building isn't designed not to have air conditioning. So when the building, if the building,
Elementary school.
if the building, I'm just saying, if the buildings were designed to incorporate air conditioning, the ventilation is different. Correct me, Doug, but the ventilation process is different than what, I grew up in a building where the windows were tall, but they put air conditioning in, that was a retrofit. You can still open those windows. The buildings now, if they're designed without it, don't have the same ventilation capacity.
Is that the case with
Welsh, I didn't speak about adding air conditioning, I just said the existing HVAC equipment is in poor shape and replacing it in kind. So I wasn't saying let's go out and change.
But that's part of the budget.
That would be part of what I proposed for long-term planning for capital. Yeah, I wasn't enhancing it, I was just replacing the equipment that already lived there.
But is that an absolute, like that would have to be done? I'm trying to get my head around, I've been to Raystown, no air conditioning, my kids went to Richburg.
This has nothing to do with air conditioning. Right now, if you go into a classroom, at the window, it's a unit ventilator that provides air exchange and heat to the classroom.
Okay, so that's.
That unit is challenged. A lot of the motors are going bad, the units do not function
And it's not like if it's 80, 90 degrees outside, you can open the windows either.
Well, you can open some, but it's not like at home where you get cross ventilation and those things.
So you're
And
paying.
you need air exchange, X number of air exchanges per hour per code.
Okay.
So no, I'm not talking about spending money to make that building different than the other buildings. I'm sorry if that was confusing.
And then Richboro Middle School, what's the status of that? Because to be budgeting for a roof, when I thought that was.
Sure, I don't know what and as I said, when I talked about that one, I don't know where we're headed down the road with Richboro Middle School.
That's a
But if we're keeping it, it's going to need a roof. If we're gonna sell it, then,
Someone else
perhaps
gonna
not.
put a roof on
Somebody buys it knowing that they'll have to put a roof on it.
Yeah,
Or they demo.
But right now, I have to assume we're keeping it and prepared to maintain it. I don't want to say, well, we're getting rid of it, so I'm not gonna allocate money to take care of it.
but I thought that we weren't keeping it open, so.
Wait, the issue, you're right, and what my comments was, we're putting a 2 million, it has a roof. If we decide to decommission it, maybe we don't need the roof. If we continue to own it, it would need a roof. So that's the question, which is, are we going to repurpose it if it's not used as a school in its current configuration? If we repurpose it, it still needs to be warm and dry. That's the problem.
I'm just trying to understand the budget is being designed around these specific items as real possibilities for that 3.6 to 7.2. And if you take two of those fairly large budget out of it, then I don't see it being necessary to go to the 7.2 or.
Unless you still own the buildings.
Right.
And we haven't agreed upon,
I thought we weren't going to be continuing with Victoria Middle School, so why would we be?
here's the problem, just so you know, if we
Closing is one thing.
The future of the building.
Something else.
Yeah,
If-
certainly.
if
We're
repurpose the
owning it
building.
as a district, but not.
If we use it for some other purpose other than educating students, it's still a property we need to maintain.
Okay.
So we could repurpose it, we could
Or
do
different.
Twine Ford maintenance to that building and not have Twine Ford.
Gotcha.
We could put, some other programs, we could rent the auditorium for community space.
if we did it quickly, we could sell it to the police department, I don't know.
Not really sure, so the decision hasn't been made.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
It's an idea.
Mark,
Go
can I
ahead.
ask something?
No, never mind. It's okay.
So, anyway, did you express an opinion on?
No, I don't have one right now.
It's just from a matter of discussion.
The other thing I think about is, there was a pretty good discussion about a question of, it was kind of a hypothetical, if you had $2.9 million, and it was around full-day kindergarten. So to me, it's kind of the same question. Only it's, do we expand our student population, take kids out of their homes even more than they are now, put them into an 11-hour day, as Patty says, or do we keep our current kindergarten configuration with a few adjustments? And it seems to me that I can see Wendy's point that we are spending a bundle of money on capital expenditures. But I lived through all this crap with putting off maintenance and watching a problem go from bad to terrible, and then having to to fight your way out of that. And I would not like to see the district go into that. So I think somehow there has to be some economies made in something else. I still don't see the need for things like, we may be too far down the road, but things like enclosed grass areas and courtyards and things like that. To me, a squared off building, even though you may not get all the sunlight you'd like, it's going to be a lot more effective, efficient in terms of the energy and maintenance, some things like that. And I think the board needs to seriously look at those kind of things going forward. The honeycomb walls at North are interesting. You know, I don't have the history of Bucks County, let alone Council Rock, to say that they're, you know, unique and something that needs to be maintained. But, you know, I agree a glass wall would be a decent answer to that. Satisfy this.
Jerry, what year was that?
We finished, we populated south in 2002, it's like 2005.
I mean, I question like some of that was the emotion of additional
2005.
high school. I don't talk to people
Part of
that
it
are
was
so
the
attached to
same,
that.
the same general community feeling about keeping Chancellor Center. You know, one of my kids went to school here. I was the first PTO president here. You know, I know that there was a lot of passion about doing something to keep Chancellor. Same thing that went on in Richboro with Richboro Elementary. You know, they moved the whole blessed building down the street. Okay, it was a craziness, but that's part of what community is about. And so, you know, it's difficult, but I think that, you know, it's another, you know, if we had $3 million, if I, you know, had $1 million, as the song says.
And I just want to be clear, I'm not saying we shouldn't be funding summer projects or ongoing.
No, I understand.
I
mean, for me,
But it's one thing saying 3 million, it's another thing saying 6 million.
right, to me,
Five.
it's a big difference.
I need to process it because I'm still trying to absorb all of it. But my inclination is like, I'm making the analogy, I've been in my house for 18 years. And I pretty much have every original appliance. It's my original roof. And recently, my husband and I are like, we've been in this house for 18 years. Things are gonna start going. And what's going to happen? You know, so now I have a home equity line of credit, just in case.
Yeah.
But the school district doesn't have a home equity line of credit. We have fund balance. And so I think to some degree, $3 million is not enough. Because the $3 million are the things that we have like immediate need and the ongoing things. Something will be sacrificed if we don't up it when we know that there are some things coming. So I do think it's more going to be for me something more along the lines of more than 3 million, but I don't know how much more. So I want to sort of wrap my head around what you prioritize. And I want to go back and reference your book. Have you picked out, like, in your priorities, there are other things in your book that have higher priorities?
There are some,
So-
I just put some of the higher costing items that could come up over the next 5 years. Certainly the roofs are definite numbers based on warranties and things like that.
When you handed out that book recently, I went through it and started like adding things up of what those higher priority things were. And when I was doing the math, I'm like, oh boy, if those things escalate into a higher priority zone, $3 million a year is not gonna go very far. So I'm trying to just sort of frame it all. But, you know, of course, that's the push that we know that we have these costs and we know these priorities in our facilities are coming. But what you say, Wendy, relative to how do we invest back into the classroom, obviously is not lost on me either. So I guess it's how that all gets balanced and where the pendulum swings in terms of how it shifts.
When I look at the recommendation about the $6 million, the way I look at it is in a year or the next 2 years, if what I believe is going to happen, and I know you're going to say, yeah, Bob, you always say that, but we're using $6 million. I don't believe I'm going to be coming back and telling you I have $3 million to put in the capital reserve. So when Doug comes, not this next summer, because we're going to have the $3 million that we just put in, but in the next year and says, I have another $3 million, and you guys look back at me and I say, our fund balance went down by $2 million, not even the $6 million. I don't have money generated from the budget to do this. If we move this $3 million in now, it would be there for that year. And I'm not even suggesting if you don't agree with Doug's 5 million, because what I say about the projects is every one of those projects stand on its own. I'm responsible for financing them. So it isn't that, oh, we can afford it. You guys better be looking at every one of those projects and saying, yes, we agree that needs to be done. So I look at that like saying, for me, I'm fulfilling my duty by getting the 6 million in there because I'm not sure I'm going to have another 3 next year. You may say, Bob, come on, but I know our EIT isn't going to be high like it had been in the past. Our salaries and all that are different because we just negotiated contracts. That isn't going to be where it is. So I'm just warning you that I don't know that next year we're going to be sitting here trying to figure out what we're going to do.
And that's what worries me too, because if we don't, if the revenues don't turn out, we don't have that, not only do we not have the money for whatever the summer projects are, but the implication is, where could it snowball into other things where it does touch the kids? So, the balance of that is.
And I will tell you, over the next 8 years, as we borrow the money for the middle schools, remember the hump where you see our budget going up like this, and then for like 6 years, there's a hump where we have fund balance that has to pay for that rather than our budget paying for it. Well, that's about $7.2 million. And that's going to start happening after we borrow the $60 million next year. So now you're going to start seeing that too, and that's going to be another drain on our fund balance. So I just look at this and say, this is the year to get it over there and to help us out. Now you can say, well, Bob, we're going to put it in some type of committed fund balance in the general fund, and we could pull it out in future years to get it that way too. And I guess you could do that, but I think if you plan, why not put it there now? You show our fund balance going up like you don't have plans for it. Well, I got to tell you, we have plans for what we're going to be doing now. We're acting on things now. Things are going, so we're going to be doing things with our fund balance. That's my
7
feeling.
years.
What?
7 years. Never, ever gone down.
Wendy, we're going into a different time.
I hope we are. I hope we are. I hope we are. Because if this board votes for $31 million in fund balance,
Oh,
I'll be swinging from the shaft.
well, that's why we should move it over.
I will be. Move it over is hiding it. You want to put it
We're not
away
hiding it. We're
for something
planning to
that's
use
not used for 2 years is in essence putting money into reserve account that is not planned to have any foreseeable future. 2 years out, that's fund balance. That's a savings account for a future expense. That's.
At any particular time, you can always transfer it back. Once it's in.
Once it's in the capital reserve, I would be able to move it back by paying debt service out of the capital reserve and reducing the amount that I pay out of the general fund. So that's how I would get it back
So
into the
what's
general
the
fund.
compromise there? So why can't we split the?
Oh, you guys can do it any.
No, I understand. I'm just saying, there's places we can move it and get it back, and there's places we can move it and not get it back. And I think a lot of this comes down to our commitment as a board, to Wendy's point, which I agree with, although this is not, none of these renovations are fun things. These are parking lots, these are roofs. So that's what's making it so challenging for me to not agree 110% with Wendy in terms of this board, we have to decide together how we're going to find a way to manage, technology integration specialists and the things that we want to bring back and some of the wish list items that Robert mentioned at the last board meeting. So I feel like our waters are getting very muddy here. It feels like it's an if-then, and I don't think that it's an if-then. I don't think it's a, if we do this, we can't have that. So how do we become committed around doing some combination of these things and planning for that, so we don't get back to having 20 trailers on properties? And then how do we manage to commit ourselves to, is that another fund? And I don't know the answer. I don't have the answer, but
I think part of the compromise for me would be, there's a couple of key things that I really, from what was said the other day, I'd really like to see happen, like somebody focused on curriculum. Personally. I don't know what that costs. So I don't know if that's with benefits and all in, whatever. I'm making up a number, $200,000. Okay, well, Million funds 5 years of it. Is that what this board does, or does the board want to fund 3 years of it? And then maybe we build it. But one thing that I would need, because then if I can say, oh, well, these, the integration specialist, someone focused on curriculum, after I saw all the work that was done last academic standards meeting, and somebody whose full-time job it could be to just understand where we really have issues and where we don't. And, you know, and some of that, I would be into that. There's a few other academic things that you could put, here's how much it would cost for these 3 academic-oriented things, and here's, so you could fund it for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. So for $1 million, I could get 3 years. I could say, put $1 million towards that, put $2 million towards this. I'm not unwilling to compromise, but I can't go there unless I get some of the things that I heard about, because they're too important to me. They're too important to me that I think they impact our kids. And I don't want to wait till we do the next budget, and then do we have enough, and do we have a tax increase and their recurring revenue?
You know, it's, anyone pick it up? You're done?
Yeah.
Okay. It's interesting, and I think part of the problem is we have to look at it, there's a bunch of things going on. Doug's gonna show us in a little bit, he's gonna show us proposals around adding 10 classrooms to 2 buildings. Well, that's gonna be somewhere between $6.25 million and $13 million for doing that. You know, so I'm just, and then we have to look at it further down the road. We talked about a little while ago, are we keeping the buildings? What are we gonna do with the buildings? Because those buildings may turn into cash at some point. So it's multifaceted. I guess I had to laugh as Denise spoke about her being in the building. I was thinking my father is still in the house I grew up in. And we look at the bits and pieces. He's kept the roof on it. He's done all these things. But you know what? When he goes to get rid of that property, it's tired. They're gonna, and I've got kids, and that's a 93-year-old man, soon to be 94, living in that house. God bless him. I've got kids every day in these buildings, and I'm just thinking that they have to be current. They have to be relevant. We spent $32 or $34 million to renovate North because we had to catch a lot of catch up. There were a lot of things that have been deferred for years. First thing, I don't know, everybody remember the third, fourth crossover? That was a $500,000, $600,000 expense, which we had to fight about to get it built because it just made no sense. We had to put the money into the building to keep it current. So I hear what you say. I understand the desire for curriculum. My big concern with that is, let's imagine you put up $1 million and it funds a position for 5 years, fully loaded. At the end of 5 years, you're gonna have to fund that out of taxes. Guaranteed, you're gonna have to bring up the taxes to cover that position. Because you're not gonna be able to just say no more.
Well, or you're gonna have to increase taxes in order to
It's
take care of
there's
this.
people, then I fund the roofs now, and I wait to get this person, I have to increase tax, it's all the same money. It's all the increasing at the end, I do think, I think.
It's about how you invest it.
Well, that's why I say
Yeah.
the middle ground is the middle ground is where most things go to the compromise. This is not Washington
Well, that's what
DC.
I'm saying, I'm not saying none of the 3, if that's what the will of everyone else is, I would be fine with none of the 3, but I really would like people on the board to consider putting some of it towards some improvements.
When do we,
I mean, unless the other people don't think we need it, or don't think we can afford it right now, I don't need to think, I'm sure no one, I don't think they don't think we don't need it, but,
okay.
you know.
And it's a finance question, which really is, when are you looking for this answer, I guess, to
Tonight.
Robert and Robert? Tonight?
Tonight.
Well, he wants it on the agenda
Yeah,
for next
really.
week.
Well,
Understand,
I
we have to have
understand that.
financial
I understand
statements
that,
done before
but-
December 31st, because the SEC requires us to have them.
I understand
We
that.
need-
My
sorry.
point was, you're looking for that decision tonight. You have 2 board members at least who will make a decision and leave. Okay, because they're not coming back. You have 2 new board members who will be appointed December 2nd or 4th, or whatever date that is, who will be here for the next 4 years. So I'm not sure I'm not sure which people you're looking to make this decision.
The other complication is that we have 2 other board members who are
No.
here this evening. I think that might.
I understand, but my thought is it's going to come before the board.
He
It's either
wanted
going
us
to come
come
before,
next week.
I understand. I'm saying that may be precipitous because there are 2 board members at that meeting who are guaranteed not to have any further decision-making regarding this issue. And there are 2 board members guaranteed who are going to have that. so that your deadline is December 31st. We meet December 2nd or 4th. What is our reorganization meeting?
December 17th is the only other meeting.
Well, you can conduct business, you can conduct business at the reorganization meeting.
Okay.
Sure.
Or could we have a vote at the next finance meeting?
On the 10th.
Understand that
And how does that?
once we
impact?
have, well, yeah, once we have these numbers, the financial statement's got to be built. I then have to write the management's discussion and analysis. This is all things that
So,
don't
but you're saying
happen.
that December 31st is your deadline, but that's not really the deadline. The real deadline is what? That
That's the
gives you enough
delivery
time.
deadline. What is,
Yeah, so
what
what's
what is
the
your
real-
decision
I
deadline?
So the
would
real
say the
deadline-
beginning of December. I need to have something at the beginning of December so they can start processing. They go through a whole review process once they build the financial statements and everything. I have to do the management's discussion and analysis at that point, once we have all the numbers and everything and they're solidified. So it's very,
If we split it down the middle, and we said 150, put 1.5 million aside for academic enhancements and 1.5 for future summer projects, could you do your statements, even if we didn't decide exactly how we were gonna use the
Correct.
details of that?
I could put 4.5 into the capital reserve. I'll put 1 million into the self-insurance fund. And then I need to use one of these same, I'm not, yeah, the 1 million. I still have to, I'll have to put it into the, one of the committed fund balances. You can't, after year end, you can't change what they're called. So I'll have to stick it in here with all us knowing that that's where it is. So I'd probably have to stick it in the property tax rate stabilization.
But you can do it.
Yes, I could do it.
Well, rate stabilization, maybe that is what it is, because it's deferring tax increases to pay for a position we want to have.
Right, and then, I mean, then if the new board wanted different direction later, those funds can get moved, yes?
At the end of next
At
year,
the, right,
At
yes.
the end of next year. Not
Yes.
until the end of, not to this time next year.
Not until our financial statements are done. I can't go midstream and say, now we're going to change what we said we were going
And
to
if
do.
we put money in
or you
capital,
can't
we
even
can't
do
get
it
it back.
at July 1st with the new budget.
No,
And,
this is a year-end
This
thing.
is the year end.
and if we put money in capital, we can't get it back. We can only go into capital, we can't come out for non-capital expenditures.
The way I get it back out is use debt service that was budgeted in the general fund and pay it out of capital, because you're able to pay debt service out of capital funds.
So,
That's what I
So
would
we
do.
prefer not to do it, yeah.
Right.
prefer not.
Yes.
well, I would say that given the tight time frame that we're on, I'm certainly comfortable with a compromise of dividing that 3 million in that way for the immediate. I could support that. And then figure out later.
I think that's awesome if you guys would do that, and I'm real good with that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I'll develop a long-term plan that we can talk about at another meeting, so we can see how it looks down the road. You know,
I
drill down the
think one
list
of
of
the
something
things-
that looks like it's a reasonable, list that's possible.
I feel like one of the things that was lost in this conversation is that you've not always known that, I mean, you held to that $3 million number for summer projects because it's become our threshold that we can't go beyond. And I think somewhere in this it was lost that you would have been doing other things in an ideal
That's
world
gonna go up to-
where there were some years where it would have been more than that, potentially. You have proposed.
Yeah.
I
And we
appreciate
share that back.
Because like I said, when you gave us that book, I went home, I had all these stickies in my book, and I'm adding up the priority things, and I definitely had a moment like, oh my God, like,
Right,
if we have some catastrophic thing where all these things happen at once, what do we do? So I genuinely do appreciate that you have a greater sense of urgency, but that being said, wanting to do more for the kids is
I don't
It's a
disagree
struggle
with taking
because
care
we
of the
haven't
kids
done
at
You
all.
never did, it was never your
Right.
intent, do it.
right, no, but I do appreciate the,
You're passionate.
it's,
Well, I
but it
appreciate
is,
you and Doug saying that you see this coming, you don't want to spring it on us one day. I mean, the bottom line is, if we didn't have this happen, you come one day and say, hey, this is the year, there's 5 roofs, and there's, you can't even raise taxes to cover that, so.
You're gonna say, where were you 5 years ago?
Well,
Exactly.
and that's the thing.
Exactly.
You guys have to
You guys
bring
are
it
not doing your
forward
job
so
or
that we're aware of the decisions that we're making and how they impact
right,
finance.
but given the time frame and the pressure to commit and whatever, I think that it's certainly reasonable to just compromise it in a different way to allow the conversation to continue.
I'm ecstatic.
It hasn't been decided yet.
Nonetheless.
Calm down.
I was the only one that said it, so you have to wait for everybody else to chime in.
We got it a little ways to go before we get started. Dr. Frazier, any?
Again, I think that the middle ground is a reasonable place to be. I absolutely appreciate the support for the list, the 2.9 list that we put out there last Thursday evening. At the same time, we have needs. We have capital needs. They're real. Some of them are absolutely real. Some of them are probable. Some of them have a little bit more of a question mark to them. But the bottom line is, if we say 3 million is 3 million is 3 million, then, and Doug comes and he says, okay, here's the list in priority order, in his opinion, and in our opinion, administratively, at some point you get to that $3 million cutoff and there's still items below it. So are we really willing to say no to X, Y, and Z, whatever it is that's below it? And that's true no matter what number it is, 2 million or 4 million or 3 million, whatever the number is, that's always going to be the case. So I think increasing the number, given where we're at from a fund balance standpoint, makes sense. But yeah, without a doubt, we got these teaching and learning needs, and they're not so insignificant. So even when we talk about a technology integration specialist, I would say specialists. I don't know what one does for 15 schools. So we got some needs there that carry a hefty price tag, and we got tons of question marks all over the school district right now, obviously. And until we let all this settle out over the next 6 to 12 to 18 months, we're going to have to operate on some assumptions and some hypotheticals, and some of that's just going to be, hey, do we value technology, and do we value adding some level of position, some level of human resources to this area, and make sure that if we do it, that we do it in a way that makes sense, while at the same time balancing all these other needs. So does splitting the difference here make sense to me? Yeah, I can't say that 3 years from now, looking back on it, I'll say that we made the right decision, because none of us can, because we don't have that crystal ball. But as we sit here this evening, yes, it makes sense to me.
Are you looking at me, Wendy? Well, I'm very happy that I had a chance to see it on the spreadsheet, because that makes more sense to me. But, I'll support this, but I have to tell you, I struggle so much, because I feel like there's so much information out there that I just can't get my arms around. So what I'd really like is to work toward, and I know this is a big ask, but to have an asset liability match going out as many years as we need to go out to match your projects. Because as I look at that screen, or that shot that you had, where you had your pending projects, and I really appreciate Denise's comment, because I was thinking, how did we take the big book of projects, and reduce this down to 2 screenshots? And in my mind, Doug, I was thinking, well, these must be Doug's priorities then. And I understand, right, because you addressed that, but what I'd really like to see is, and I'm happy to talk to you and Bob about the asset liability match if you're unfamiliar with that, but we should really be projecting these things out, because if we're looking at 2021 for a roof replacement, at
Several roof replacements.
I'm sorry?
Several.
Well, I'm just picking out Hillcrest.
Okay, all right.
2021, I'm assuming 1.8 million is today's dollars.
Yes.
So we have to inflate that number out. And then construction,
4% annually.
okay, so that's your construction inflation rate. That's a big difference between now and then. So we should have that projected out, and then have a projection of what our assets are going to be and how that's going to line up. Then I would feel much more comfortable sitting here making a decision. I'll support this because of the recommendation that Bob's given me, and what I'm hearing from our superintendent and some of the other people on the board, and just the way I see it flowing out. I'd like to tell you that the big picture is so fuzzy to me. I don't like it.
Don't disagree. That's what I was asking for tonight, is do you want that plan?
I've been asking for that plan since I ran for election. So the fact that we're getting a little step closer, I'm ecstatic about it.
Good.
And whatever help I can give you.
Too ecstatic. Just a little more. You guys are
So it's
upset
that
over here.
corner.
Okay, I'm very happy about that.
That can turn around anyone quickly enough. Okay.
This is the less than static corner,
Just static.
just static.
Yeah, Rick's been known for being stiff.
I've never seen Rick.
So does this mean that it'll be on the agenda for next week? I mean,
Yes.
It sounds like there's
Just
enough of
give
a
us a lot of
wheel.
time to
Can
put
you-
that
can you
together
do me-
and-
Mike?
I'll be honest, I don't know where I am. I offered the compromise out as a way to try to coalesce people that I thought most people will get around it. I don't know where I am personally. I need to go back and look at a couple things that I think are critical, and I, in all fairness, need to ask you for a very, very, very high level broad brush cost on a couple items.
And I would just ask, not here, but that
Share with us.
Mike
Yeah.
get an opportunity to speak with you about it and talk with Ed as the incoming, just get their feeling, because a compromise is a compromise. What someone might say is, it's like, well, I didn't like the idea at all, so a compromise is still bad. I don't know what people are thinking, and I don't know what Patty and Rick thought. So it's I don't know. I don't want to throw, the people leaving are not, they're still in office, so they need to have an opinion. But I also want to understand what the people who are coming into it.
I'll comment just very broad brush. I view these things as capital is one-time money. We have one-time money, we spend it on capital. When you start talking about program costs, that's reoccurring expenses. You need to find a revenue source for that. That's broad base. I'm as conservative as this guy with that kind of stuff. So I'd have given it all to Doug because that's one-time money that we can use for capital 20 years.
So you can't do anything about those academic needs until next budget year? So you.
No, we find savings. We've been talking about finding savings for a couple of years now. We actually do. That's the difference, so.
Well, that's-
So it'll take you 6 months to do that. Like,
Well, you recognize
I
that-
I want to hire somebody in January.
The budget cycle starts now. Okay, the budget cycle already started. So Robert's listing the other night at our board meeting, for me, that was like, well, I now know what to expect Robert to be including in his budget. That was the eye opener, which was great, an opportunity, now I have an idea. I won't be really surprised. But to Mike's question, it becomes, so where else do you say?
So to that point, there may be enough people who want to put it off, I just don't think you know yet.
I'll live with whatever you decide. I'm very gracious to give it. If Ron needs the numbers, when we get it, so.
I would suggest, based upon the totality of this discussion, that we place it on the agenda as an action item, that we do a level of outreach to Patty and the other board members who weren't here this evening, and we want to take the temperature on that. So Doug and Bob, I would encourage you to together to do that outreach. Obviously, we now have all this online, so they can watch it, and then after they watch it, have that conversation, as well as an outreach to Ed Tate, to ascertain his preliminary thoughts, so we know that heading into it. And if something turns and it no longer makes sense for it to be on the November 19th agenda, then we pull it and we table it, perhaps until the rework meeting or whatever the case might be. But I would suggest that we walk away from this meeting right now with that as a game plan, if that's agreeable.
Right, and on the thought that it will be on the agenda as an item for decision, include the thought that it will be at least 30 minutes of deliberation. Because obviously the people who aren't here will have opinions that will affect the people who are here and want to hear that.
No doubt. Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a long evening.
Back at lunch.
Be warned.
Doug usually does.
It's really hard. I have to say, it always seems when we disagree, sometimes that somehow comes out, but I think the work that was done tonight was very good. Some of the best, to be honest. I mean, so I said I was the contentious person. I just want to make sure. It's not, I'm grateful to have this information. And in fact, in no way do my comments mean I don't want you to move ahead with what you were going to do. I do want you to do that. I'm just saying if we're back to, we have to decide today what to do with this money, that's where I am with that. I definitely would like to see you invest in that. I think it's important information.
I respect your opinion and decision, yeah, it's not a problem. Put together the list and develop it in a methodology that Mark's been talking about, and that's not a problem. Todd and I work together to put those things together, and in the future, we'll be back to review that list and talk more about it. This gives us time. We know where we're headed for the next year, so, thank you.
All right, so are we switching gears at this point? Or
We are.
I think so.
But you're just done with your first part, right? You're coming back.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
Gail's going to leave.
Thank you, Gail.
It's the same as it was, it's the same PowerPoint it is every time.
I got to tell you, you notice the accountant's PowerPoint, it's black and white and numbers all over. He has colors, he's a salesman, isn't he?
You got too much money, you got money for all those colors.
We got back to lunch and the salesman.
Wait a second.
You do a good job, more than you know.
I'm
Moving forward,
an accountant through and through.
when the Thomas Middle School is done, we're gonna have years of no maintenance.
Yes, we're gonna have years, but
Good
we still
deal.
have to consider starting from the beginning, on the side.
It's all how you look at the world.
Good
I know, I know.
Or the 10 years, unless you're gonna wait 10 years and say, I gotta borrow money to replace.
But again, years of no maintenance costs, so why should we have to allocate funds for that school and doing those, I would say.
You'll probably have minimal money spent on that square footage, but you should still, so the 1% by retaining less than the 2 because of buildings like that, but you should still look at the overall square footage as you save monies for the district long term. I mean, if I build a new house, I should be putting X number of dollars away each year for the next 15 years so that when I get to that point, I can replace my windows, or I can replace the roof, or I can replace. Right. Unfortunately, I can't do that. I wish I
Good idea.
I think better everyone else than myself.
I know.
Mine was Federal Marine Launch that was unexpected.
Well, everybody keeps saying South is new, Welsh is new, and then we find out that it actually isn't anymore.
No,
10
it's,
years old, 12 years old.
exactly.
Is everybody leaving my meeting?
Not yet.
Okay.
Just
All
so
right,
you
so
want
listen, what I want to do though is try to move through the first 3/4 of this as quickly as I can, because at the end is the master planning piece where we talk about the 2 10 classroom buildings, and I think, Bob will want to be involved in that. We'll probably more conversation about that than anything. So, I got it. You gotta turn it off. So, the agenda, we'll just hit them as they come. We don't have to spend time talking about it. Energy management, the monthly report is actually up a point from last time that we presented, so we were at 75, our score is actually 76. I'm happy to see it move in a positive direction. 75 is the minimum score for Energy Star rating. The ASHRAE Level 1 energy audit that was prepared, our specialists have looked at that. We're developing a list of projects that we believe, after Aramark has made a proposal, of realistic things that we could implement and develop the cost and the payback, and that'll come back to us a little bit later. One of the things that I want to talk about is we have an allocation in our budget of about $80,000, not to exceed, approved based on hourly rates for Aramark to work with us on energy. I'd like to get some face time with Aramark back in the district. We used to have somebody here full-time. I'd like to have somebody here part-time, meaning if it's $30,000 a year, where they're coming in every month when we get the report, they're meeting with us, they're making sure that we're implementing the things we need to implement. If we need them to come and work with us in a school to make the adjustments that we need to make with our specialists to keep us on track. The value of maintaining this energy will more than pay for their fees to help us stay on task.
But Doug, we're not, that's what I just said.
Well, one of the things that, I'll be with you in a minute, Mark, one of the things that has changed is that our baseline is likely different than it was when this was performed 6 to 10 years ago. So we'd like to get a new baseline. We have a lot of modulars now gone. We have 3 buildings that are renovated. So we'd like to establish a new baseline to see where our score is based on that baseline. So perhaps it's actually better than it looks.
Yeah,
We're not
that's
sure.
true. That's true.
But
Why can't we have staff do this? Do we need to have someone from the outside?
I don't have a staff member that I could possibly spare to spend the time to do it. Now, I could, and I have considered bringing to you a person that I have that is knowledgeable, that was intimately involved in this process when this work was done, and even my HVAC specialist that I have. But I'm not sure that, it's probably going to be in addition to what they do. Our specialist, Fletcher, we rely upon. He is our HVAC guy, so he is working throughout the district doing his daily tasks. So it would be hard for him to do both. A regular building mechanic, while he's busy taking care of his school, may have a little more time to do it. It's something that are kicked around, but it may come as a request from their union for some additional fees to ask them to do something that's beyond what their contract says. That's not for me to decide.
Well, operationally, in your department, how often do you go through and look at the roles and responsibilities and duties and how efficiently they're? Because anybody can be busy, but not getting anything.
We are understaffed, to be honest with you. We have lost some folks. We're looking to replace one now who's going to be retiring. We have another person who we haven't replaced yet that's on sick leave. And I've asked for a person the last couple of years, and that, unfortunately, with where the budget is, and I recognize a specialist before, a mechanic is where we need to be. There's times in any given day where we have a person out, and I have a mechanic who is toggling between two buildings to help the principal take care of the two schools, or we assign one of our specialists who's supposed to be doing work in the buildings, actually in a school, taking care of the school, because we don't have a person there. We don't have a list of substitutes of people we can bring in when people are out, so.
Doug, I want you to, you're talking about 30,000, because we have 80 aside. In my business, when we're conducting a clinical trial and it runs a long time, one of the things that happens to us in the middle is that staff turns over. And when the staff turns over, we have to get people out there to retrain the new staff because they don't know the protocol. And I bring that up here because we have staff, and then we have 11,400 participants in this program who have aged out of the program by now. Most of them are gone. We have all new kids. So I ask you, which is, you have the 80, you're talking about 30. Maybe Mark and I may differ on this, but I'm looking at it saying, how do I re-energize it? So that, it's funny to talk about energy, use that word, but how do I reinvigorate it so that we get people thinking about it again? Because I think what has happened, as I look at the numbers, they are not where they were. And I think what happened was the bloom was off the rose. How do I get that rose standing up straight again so people notice it and do it? I think that you were talking 30, I'm talking 80. I think the 50,000 invested would have a return in multiples in terms of actual dollar savings. So I would be supportive of having the program stepped up a notch because we've let it, we've accepted it.
It has not gone close to where we started. I mean, we were spending $1 million more a year than we spend now. We are still doing very well.
We are.
76. So I don't want anyone to think that this program is like going hot. That's not the case. But I agree. I want to make sure that this program stands strong, and I wouldn't mind going back and even though we're Energy Star, we don't go for the actual recognition of an Energy Star rated district, which I think is good for us to do those kind of things. So it wouldn't hurt to have those goals, so the staff sees the accomplishments.
Grant money, any grant money out there for programs like this?
Not much right now.
Other than $4 million you already got?
Oh, that came out of left field.
I'm
right?
just teasing,
We
yeah.
weren't talking about that. Is there anything for maintaining? Maybe there's something out there for a building or a district that's dropped, bring them back up. I don't know.
But we haven't
dropped to that level.
We haven't dropped a level. We're at a very high level. We're still at a very high level. We're 76 on a scale where you need to be 75 for an Energy Star recognition, which is really good.
Right, but nobody in this district, just the way this district works, nobody's happy that you passed the test. In this district, everybody wants to pass the test beyond. And so
do I. So
I understand
that's
that.
why
I'm
back
saying,
in front of you, right? So And
True.
you're right, and Wendy brought this up in the past. It is getting in front of, yes, we have 11,400 new people involved. We also have new staff involved. When Joe Light came in front of everybody and talked about the energy plan, he sold that to a bunch of staff that may have turned over as well. So there's a lot of new staff.
So I'm
a lot of
interested
re-education.
if you have the energy or if you have wherewithal to tell us what it would do to step it up and
I can
reinvigorate it. That's me.
Would Aramark consider something which they really do part-time
Incentivize
aid,
it. Well, yeah.
in fact, is spending that less amount of money, but if they made significant strides, we'd give that.
We could
We
look
could
at that.
structure it so that if we save money on the energy, we have the money to pay them for the services.
That was actually part of, there was actually a rebate to Aramark in the early versions of this contract,
Right.
which gave them a participation
They
say.
They took a
said
lot
to
of
us they
low-hanging
won't-
fruit and made their money.
Yes, they did.
We're now at capital projects to start this, to gain more savings.
Well, we were initially too. We changed air handlers and we put in new Johnson controls. We did a bunch of, we invested.
And I'm happy to look at this, but I'm looking at it like in next year budget.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting,
I didn't know if you
but
meant
the
right now.
80,000 we have for Aramark is in our budget now, so that's not something we'd be asking for money for. That's something
Okay,
we
you have that,
would
but you just wanted approval to
I would
spend
come to you to spend some of that money to
Okay.
do this, so I wouldn't be
It's
asking
in the
for new
budget.
money, it would be money.
Yeah.
Now, bear in mind, if we don't use it, then we don't spend it, so,
Right, you-
I'm not looking
then
to
it'll be
waste it.
fund balance. You give away everything.
So I'll revisit it and look at maybe just a little bit different level.
Come on, yeah, yes.
As long as I get 5 minutes.
That's just the score, that's where we've been. And one of the other things I want to quick touch on, we talked about this power factor correction, we actually added it to Rolling Hills. We basically, in general, and I've talked about how it works, it's clean energy, it's keeping that energy consistent and at a high level in the building. Much like, in a very simple term, when you're in the kitchen using water, somebody flushes the toilet upstairs and your water fluctuates. That's what happens with your power that doesn't have the appropriate protection in front of it. And while the power needs to be at 98% of the plant, what happens down the line of it, they don't really care. So if you're the 5th building in line and you're less than 98, if you're, in our case, 70 or 80, that's not their problem, that's our problem. So there's equipment you can put in the front end to boost the performance. Since we've put this in.
Pipeline.
What?
Is it what you do, pipeline?
No, there's little components that go at the head end of your service on your building that clean it up before it actually comes in. The harmonics are clean, everything is clean. And there's a description on that PowerPoint if you want to read more about it. I won't get into the technical end of it, but I put some information in there. Rolling Hills, we've already noticed the projection, and I'll get right to it. Rolling Hills was projected to be a payback of 3 years. Right now, we're looking at, it may be a year to pay back what we paid for this. And that was kind of our guinea pig. We paid about $18,000 to put this in at Rolling Hills to see how it works. This isn't something he just does at little buildings. He's done Giants, the stadium in the Meadowlands. He's done San Francisco's Candlestick Park. This is done at much bigger places, this company that does this. So a significant increase. We were at 0.78, we're now at 0.97. We haven't lost a motor. We were losing compressors, motors, and things in this building on a regular basis, which were costing us more than the savings that he projected as a payback.
You can't get much
That's
higher.
awesome.
You can't get much
You're not gonna go much higher.
Really impressive.
And
That's
he continues, he
yeah.
takes the utility bills, he adjusts for temperature, he's looking at things, he provides us with updates, so I'm actually seeing real numbers. So,
That's great.
in
Are
saying
we
that,
gonna do it somewhere else?
yes, so in saying that, what I'd like to do, and what I would do is suggest taking this from, I talked to Bob a little bit, from the general fund that I already have in place. So again, I wouldn't be asking for monies outside of the budget that I already have in place, to go to north and south, which were the 2 buildings that would really want and benefit by this system. It's about a $72,000 investment for each building. The annual savings are projected at $38,000 a year. The payback is less than 2 years of each one of those projects. It's a year guarantee, so if you're not happy in the first year, and you'll see the results of the reports, you can say, hey, take your stuff out, and I don't want it.
No brainer.
No brainer.
So,
I like the ROIs.
in 10 years, yeah, right? And in 10 years, we've saved almost $750,000, and the equipment's good for at least 20.
You should do a summary of this at a board meeting. This is the kind of stuff that does not get out in the public. That's good, and I know we've been here, so you're keeping on fast for us, but I would love to see you have 10 minutes.
Yeah, that'd be fine with me.
It's outrageous.
This is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I'll tell you this, which was my preference would be, shoot it on site and put it out there, have the guy with you so you get the discussion. Because seeing what it is, getting the numbers is great. What are we talking about?
Yeah, and don't do it at a meeting when we have a long meeting.
No, no,
Make one of the shorter meetings, and I
Which
just.
one's that?
Which one's that? It's just
We
like,
used to have.
Every
you
now
know
and
what?
then.
I remember that.
Just like the
Not-
propane thing. Do it the same way you did the propane thing. We can watch it if you want. We can roll it while we're in a meeting and see it, but
It's
it's
great
useful.
work.
It's not much to see. It's a box that power passively goes.
I understand, but people don't, when you talk
Slides
about,
are great.
when you talk about burning out a compressor or something, people don't know what when they see the size of a
Yeah, we
compressor.
could take some pic, we could include some. graphics.
Exactly, that's my
I got it.
So you're proposing 2, but we've still got, what, 12 more schools that won't have it?
Not every school is in need of this. There are some that are, and he's actually evaluating each one of the schools. It's something that, even with the 2 new middle schools we're doing, I said, hey, is this something we should bid and design in the initial process? He said, absolutely not. You finish the project, I'll do the readings, we'll see where you are. Then I'll come in and I'll put this equipment at the head end. It's not something.
I think that's, you want to slide for that too, because.
Sure, I can
otherwise
show you
people
the
are
other
gonna go,
buildings
What
that
about
are
the rest of the
candidates.
schools?
Right.
I mean, you get, like, everybody goes, it's a no-brainer, why are we only doing 2?
Rolling Hills was a nice game.
Right, the payback, it was, right, it was all electric, and more so on that building was the amount of motors we were losing, and the amount of money we were paying to replace them, so. Considering that, a couple of motors, compressors, you could be 10 grand and already had paid it back, not knowing when they would have gone.
That's
Are
very.
you asking for a board proposal then?
I would come to you with the proposals at a board meeting and ask you to authorize independent agreements for him, so not yet, but I will be down the road.
Well, that's
It's not something I have to
that's
bring to you now.
Yeah.
Facilities improvement update, Goodnow Elementary School, in good shape. We're wrapping up, final accounting on that project, cleaning up some of the final punch list items. We'll be bringing to you, and I plan to bring them next week, the change orders to close out the project. The only add, and I'll go over the actual list with you at a later date, is the, general contractor who we had about a $43,000, $44,000 change order overall. We talked about some of the things that were impacted at the last, maybe 2 or 3 facilities ago. I brought to you some of the items I showed in the bullet list. All of the others are going to be credit deducts back to us from the allowances. So overall, the contract amount that was approved for the project will be less than the number you approved. So the final number will be less than what you approved for this project. More good news, really.
By $21,000,
Yes.
it's very close though, because it's so big a number, right?
We didn't use the contingency though, so on top of the project, we have a couple $100,000 contingency to use for construction, which we didn't have to dig into, which is really.
But it also means the estimates are right on target, and you can't get close.
Well, it was the construction at bid numbers, but we didn't go crazy with additional costs and things like that.
As we close out those projects, do we produce a plaque or some thing for the persons who, even though we hired them, who led the projects?
We have not done anything like that in the past. We did it on Holland, we did it on Churchville.
We didn't do a package.
No, not a dedication
There's a
plaque,
dedication.
a recognition to the people who were the project lead or something. Just as a courtesy, a small thing for their trophy will.
So the one thing that I want to touch on at Goodnow is with the HVAC. At the end of the year, as it got warm, we had some issues in the buildings with high humidity levels. Not sure why, because the same engineer that designed Churchville designed this. Now, we did have issues at Churchville, if you recall. was able to resolve those around the table with the team without anything more than that. There was many meetings. They did put in new valves, they replaced some things for us and fixed it. Those issues were resolved before this was designed, but we're still having some issues, and I think it could be with the controls or some equipment issues. The important thing to know is that the engineer is looking at the testing, adjusting, balancing reports and the sequence of operations, which is the SOO. We're looking at that information, we're studying it, and it's not something that is going to go away and then come the summer when we turn on the air conditioning again and we have problems, that it's our problem. So that's something that I'm sticking with. The team is aware of it, and we'll continue to bird dog that. Everybody's on the same page with watching that. On to Newtown and Holland Middle School update. These are meetings that have already taken place. Meetings that are coming up. Northampton Township, November 18th, the Board of Supervisors meeting. So we will be in front of them for that on the 18th. Newtown Township Board of Supervisors, the 24th of November, the following week. The hearing, as you're aware, is next Thursday. That will be in Historic Classroom 2, so that we can prepare the boardroom for the fire recognition and some other things that are coming to the board that same evening. So we'll have it in Historic Classroom 2. That way it's just second.
That doesn't get recorded then?
It is getting recorded,
Oh,
yes.
like this?
No, Matt, yes, like this.
Your slide.
I'm sorry, the Act 34 meetings?
Yeah.
Yes, will be recorded and streamed live on YouTube, just like this.
I got the building.
Historic, we'll be in Historic Classroom 2 next door.
I'm sorry.
Was it the buildings wrong, or I just wasn't sure
No,
which was.
Northampton
which was
Township,
first.
Holland Middle School is next Thursday.
Yeah, but it says me.
Or next, the 18th.
You said the
And
township.
I have the buildings wrong. Make sure you go to the
Swap.
description, not the
It's
location.
fine, I just wasn't sure which was correct.
Sorry.
The Thursday.
I switched them because chronologically they changed, and I forgot to change the buildings otherwise. Act 34 hearing, as I said, 6 and 6:45 next Thursday. FACCOM update on the 10th of December, I'll be bringing Part D&E, project accounting and design development, to that meeting. We'll talk more about it at facilities. The 30-day waiting period for the Act 34 hearing ends the 19th of December. In January, I'll be coming back to you for approval of Plan Con D, E, and F, and I'll explain those to you before the meeting. I have descriptions of all of it. And then ultimately, if things continue down the road, the board continues to move these projects, in April, we'll be coming back with project accounting based on bids, and then ultimately looking for approval of the bids on the 21st of April. Mike, I'm sorry you have to head out.
I'm sorry.
Land development, Holland Middle School, the two intersections were studied. We got a letter that basically there was no significant impact to these intersections. We felt that would be enough for the planning commission to say all is good. However, despite that, they still wanted to look at East Holland Road and Holland Road. McMahon performed that study, that's the township engineer on their behalf to take a look at it. They came back and basically said that they still don't believe that at this time anything is required. We'll have further discussions about this with the supervisors. I anticipate what they'll say is that we won't require anything now. When the project's done, we want the intersection looked at, and it may require some restriping work at minimum, which isn't going to be a significant thing. If it's limited to that, that's a good answer.
We spent a lot of time talking about that pork chop and crosswalks and sidewalks. That's
No. I'm
That's
talking about the
not-
intersection improvements, not the crosswalk. That's still allowed.
Can we go back a slide to the, East Holland?
East Holland and Buck Road, vehicular traffic study was
Yeah.
removed, not the crosswalk, just the
Yeah.
vehicular
Because I
traffic.
know there have been traffic study cars parked there several times.
Those
over.
counts were related to the crosswalk design.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, they can't double up and use the same data?
They're not, that is actually McMahon doing that on their own for the township, we're not involved. Park and Rec thing, we'll talk about at the Board of Supervisors meeting coming up. NBCMA issue is ongoing, those discussions.
Doug, go back for a second. explain to me that bottom paragraph, NBCMA discussed that 07 October 01 board meeting. What does that mean, 07 October 01?
That's when we presented to the authority on the 16th of September, and then the Newtown Bucks County Municipal Authority at their October 7th meeting.
Oh, why is this supposed to?
Prior to that
So
meeting.
that's supposed to be 15.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's 15.
So-
Yeah.
I guess the other thing, okay.
Is there any update?
Yeah.
New information been
Well-
transpired or?
No.
What's the 15,000 versus 144,000? What's the?
All I can say to that right
Huge
now
variance.
is that well, the 15,000 is based on actual costs that we know that we pay based on our utility bills.
Okay.
The 144 is based upon the calculations when we do new construction, based on, more so on residential dwellings and equivalent dwelling units EUs and how that's calculated. So that's why there's a discrepancy, and we're having discussions on how we can hopefully find some middle ground.
Okay, so this doesn't have to do with, like Philadelphia and the county and the state,
Even though
gallons.
Philadelphia looks at it, and it has nothing to do with any of the issues.
It's
My
entirely
experience
locally.
is that they have to sign off on all that stuff.
They do.
Yeah, and it's not just, they look and say, yes, it can get very involved.
It can. That's not really the issue. We met with the township to look at the Buck Road pedestrian crossing. We're waiting for a sketch to come from the township accompanied by the fees. And again, that's something we'll discuss with the supervisors. I expect that when it's over, we'll be perhaps suggesting some minimal contribution to the intersection and asking the township to take care of it on their own if possible. PennDOT approval is required for us to get involved at this point and incorporate that in our documents could definitely challenge our bid process. So I'm worried about that. I'm worried about us absorbing all of the costs for intersection improvement that I don't think benefits the district from a student standpoint because we would never encourage kids to cross that street. So that's going to be the one sticking point with them that we're going to have to work through. I'm sure we'll be talking more about it.
I did speak with the land developer who's involved in it. Because of the interest of the community in which I live, he's really oppositional to creating a sidewalk as well, but maybe we have to join forces if this progresses.
I don't think he has a choice. I think his part of his agreement was that he had to extend it to that intersection. We don't have a problem extending our sidewalk through the site to the intersection. Our argument
So
is
the crosswalk's connecting to something which is.
connecting it to his sidewalk.
Exactly, it's
His or hers,
ridiculous.
whoever that developer is. Can you still see okay? The site, this is basically just the overview of what the Newtown Middle School issues are. The area limited traffic assessment is the yellow circle. The drive subject to PennDOT approval is the blue. We have not had any major issues with PennDOT looking at the intersection in that area. However, the township is taking a look and asked us to do some additional studies at both of those intersections for further evaluation and discussion with the board of supervisors.
Who's doing the studies?
We are.
What cost?
I have the estimate down. It's basically included in his fees that our engineer has. But we had an allowance for all site improvements. It's coming from those allowances. We have not exceeded those. So if that were to happen, I would certainly come to the board and say, hey, we've exceeded that. The sanitary line on Tyler State Park, I think it's important that you at least understand what this issue is so that if down the road we can incorporate it in our project and have to bid it as a separate project to keep this process moving, I want you to be aware. Because there is a remote chance that we don't include the entire replacement through their park with this project. Reason being, if the Newtown Bucks County Joint Municipal Authority, which is Newtown here, cannot exercise their authority to go through the Tyler State Park easement, which they've assured us they will. But if for some reason they run into any problems and we say we're putting that on our drawings, we're bidding it, and we don't get that approval, without that approval, we can't move forward. We have to have all our approvals in place for PDD or we can't proceed. But we can reasonably stop our project at a manhole just short of Tyler State Park, and then get that piece as its own project after the fact, or even as a change order through the contractor, once we start the project, if we get a reasonable number through them. So
And
we're-
Newtown's okay with that?
it's not, yeah, Newtown Township would be fine with that. And so the authority just wants us to replace it. There's a piece of, and I'll explain it, there's a piece of terracotta pipe. So you get your bearing, Richboro Road's on the bottom. The existing western bus drive for Newtown is coming up and down the right-hand side of the sheet. The Tyler State Park is on the left side. And you can see a green kind of dashed squiggly line. That's the property line for Newtown Middle School. The new 2-inch force main is coming from our new building down here and eventually shooting across Pineville, the existing manhole. We can terminate into that manhole, and from that point forward, all of this will function as it already does. But what has been asked for by the authority, and is reasonable, is, hey, when you replace this line, which they did a camera scope of, and it's full of tree roots, it's terracotta pipe, and it was put in specifically for us. So that serves no one else except the district. So for them to say, well, them to assume the cost doesn't seem very reasonable. Yes.
Who else ties in at MHC5?
That's only us. So we come in, we tie in, and we continue.
So, but they're having to stop there.
Because from this point out, it becomes steel. It's a ductile pipe, so we have no issue with the pipe there. Only the piece in here. Now, we think we can, with a 2-inch force main, push a lot of this underground through, but at some point, we're going to run into some challenges. And I think that when we start talking about the authority exercising, exercising their authority within the easement, there are some trees and things in here that may have to be removed to put some of these lines in. And if that's the case, I anticipate there's the possibility of some challenge with that. So we want to be sure that we're not putting ourselves in a bad spot by counting on replacing this with this project. If we get the approval that we anticipate and are confident they can get, it will absolutely be part of our bid. If not, we would remove it and come to you later and say we're going to bid it as its own project.
Do you have a ballpark on what you think it goes from yellow to blue manhole? What the cost? Ballpark?
I don't have the ballpark for it. I don't.
You're talking about 10,000?
More than that, it's probably.
I don't even know.
I don't want to guess.
It's not
Yeah,
less
it's
than
more than 10.
less than 100.
It's less than $1 million.
Okay.
Continuing the Western Drive, we talked about traffic impact fees. The PC, the Planning Commission recommended waiving. We'll discuss that again with the Board of Supervisors. Some other things we've been working on, a lot of discussions on phasing for Holland Middle School. Countless hours spent talking about how we're going to phase the project, how it best works, how we minimize disruptions, where certain programs will be at certain times of phasing, making sure we have the programming that's needed for the principals while we do it. Reduce the timing from 36 months to 28 months, which is fantastic for everyone involved. The ACE grant paperwork continues after we go through the bid phase. Act 34 preparation, we've all been preparing for it. Bob has the financing guys set up to come to our Act 34 hearings. Rob Cox and a stenographer will be at the hearings as well. So we're working on it. Schrader Group and Breslin are working on the plan documents along with the design of both of the schools. Developed a list of alternates for consideration, things to control the cost, deleting 4 classrooms at each of the schools is an option, meaning going from 17s to 16s. Roofing systems we're looking at, automated temperature controls is a big one because that can cost us a lot of money if you understand HVAC bids along with controls. Johnson owns Train, they like to team up, or Johnson and Caterpillar. Johnson and Train. So anyway, there's different companies that team up together and they kind of bundle their numbers, and then other people can't bid the job because of the challenges. So we're developing strategies to reasonably bid the HVAC and control packages so that we don't spend additional monies on the project. HVAC equipment vendors, finishes, potential solar alternate to manage lead points. So we have solar that's being designed, minimal solar, on the roof area, if we need the lead points. So if we can't get the points we need from other components and we need the lead points, we'll know the value of what it costs to get those points and we can talk about. Some paving in the outdoor eating areas are also alternates. The foundation systems at Holland Middle School have been one of the items that have been concerning and have cost us some money on the project. I won't get into the details other than to say the soils aren't necessarily unsuitable, but they haven't been compacted the way that we would have hoped they would around the building when it was built. So they're not suitable for bearing as they exist. You got to remove that, and then you got to put back either the same soil you took out in 8-inch lifts, or you just bring in clean stone, call it a day. You have a site that's clean, dry, and you're certain that it's not going to be too wet to continue to build on. So stone is probably the best answer, along with some micro piers up near the face of the building to minimize the undermining of the existing building when you do exchanges. Environmental studies are just about complete. Approvals are in progress. Conservation District actually has gotten back to us on both jobs, and they're both in very good shape from a Conservation District standpoint. I sent you a memo relative to budgetary concerns for these projects. Again, something that I got from the construction manager, wanted to pass it along. We won't know what the costs are until we actually receive the bids, and where the bid climate is at that time is just not known right now. But they have seen some decline in competition because of the economy. There's a lot of projects out there. Prior to this, there was not as much, so you had more people bidding, less work. Those concerns to the budgets, however, won't adjust or won't impact our Act 34 process. PDE actually has recognized that prices have gone up, and they've actually increased their aggregate building expenditure by 3% just recently, which is rare for PDE to adjust any numbers in the plan count process. So that's something that really does tell a story. Plan count parts. I talked a little about when I'd be coming to you with those. The Network Operations Center in very good shape. A lot of the activities we've talked about are either complete or in progress and planning to be complete soon. Matt has some dates for service transitions, preparing for the switchover and then the actual switchover. So we're actually getting to the point where we're ready to make this real. Come mid-December, this building will be functioning as Matt's operations center. There are some change orders that will be coming relative to this. I just keep this list in front of you so you're aware. There's a list of the same things that we talked about at the last meeting. A couple quick shots of what's going on. You can see we now have drywall going in. The big things, we're getting the HVAC systems in place, insulating the pipes that you can see in the upper right-hand corner. The electrical systems, the dehumidification, air conditioning for the space where the equipment will be, the ladders for all of the wiring that goes in, the wire management systems are in place. The pad's been poured outside for the generator and for the HVAC systems, and you can see from inside all of the conduits coming down and how they hook through the wall, and then ultimately hook up to feed where the generator will be. Everything's nice and organized. There's good access to those for future. The 2 outdoor units for the data center have been installed. The opening has been cut where the new overhead door will be to get the larger pieces of deliveries in when they do come for their program. So it's moving along well. Capital project updates. Basically, all of the systems are in good shape. The one place that we're still working on, this project was finished a year ago, is Sulphine-Stone. We're having some HVAC issues with Sulphine-Stone. I wanted to make sure that you were aware of this. We're having ongoing meetings. We're working on resolving it. The engineers, the contractors, everyone has come back. We've had discussions. We're meeting again actually tomorrow morning to follow up on this, and I think that we'll have this.
Just say November.
Yeah, sure. Second meeting is November. Right. That's tomorrow. A recap, this is basically bringing back to you the capital projects that I brought to you last month and asking for just a nod to allow me to move forward with GKO Architects, who is under contract with us. This is the third year of their 3-year agreement, based on their sliding scale fee to document these projects and bid the projects. Not looking for any approval other than for them to document and go out to bid. Obviously, I bring the bid back and then we decide if we want to perform the work or not. So the list is the same list that I presented before. Nothing's been changed, nothing's been added or modified in any way. The bottom line is the numbers do come out to about $3 million, which we will absolutely respect. The reason I asked for that is we had the presentation on October 8th. I'm back again tonight. Programming and design will basically be from now through the middle of December. We would document from December to February, bid the project over that month from February to March, come back to you in March, award the projects in March, and that allows us the time we need to get the materials, to get everybody in place, to set up successful projects June when the kids leave. There's a lot of districts that wait until the spring and bid jobs and wonder why things aren't finishing, and that's not the way to do it. We need to plan the work and work the plan. So is there at least a nod of me being able to move forward with the architect on this? Or I've never formally brought this to the board for an approval to move forward with the architect. I don't know how we, Oh, I'm sorry. You want from the beginning? So North was a railing infill, basically school claims brought that to our attention. It's an insurance inspector that comes and provides Bob with a list of things that they have concern for. Cameras, analog cameras with digital. We have the auxiliary gym that's in pretty bad shape in South. They basically put block walls over the face of columns, and it's only a very narrow piece of block, and they're cracking out, falling out, so we want to repair those. The acoustical cloud of the proscenium arch itself is basically for acoustical reasons. They're, if you talk to Charlie Cassidy and talk to his staff, they'll tell you that they're losing a lot of sound straight up. It's the one place they didn't put clouds in that space to.
Rick, you're starting, we argued over $100,000 diva, and you're leaving, we're arguing over more sound.
That's right, just looking at that.
Churchill, this is an issue from the past, a flashing issue. 2 remaining modules at Hillcrest, wireless infrastructure at Hillcrest lab restoration to a classroom to address the needs for capacity. Hillcrest is the one place where when we.
Oh, I'm sorry, lab 2 classroom, got it,
Yep,
okay,
yep,
good, I'm sorry.
Yep, Welsh, basically is the largest of the projects. That's a roof we've decided we can now coat with the coating to get 10 years out of the roof versus replace the roof. So we would go over the membrane roof and clean it. It's a third of the cost of replacement. Yeah.
I know, I just.
Yeah, it's a third of the cost. It also has a $50,000 allowance for some flashing repairs. And there's a chance the number comes in less than what we're showing. It's just at this point an estimate until we do field investigations. Wireless at Newtown. Newtown is the lab restoration to a classroom. Richboro L is the 2 remaining modulars, removing those. Rolling Hills, removing the 2 remaining modulars. Same with Ricetown. Miscellaneous, and this is what we talked briefly about, is adding concrete slabs at the propane fueling stations. And then a floor replacement allowance. I know at Hillcrest Elementary School, Nakia has a couple floors for sure. She needs replaced, and we have some at some other schools. So we would apply that allowance to those schools.
We don't share any kind of reimbursements for any of that, right?
No.
These are all non-reimbursable projects.
Can you just remind me, didn't we talk about, how did we resolve the question about whether or not that propane?
Well, we really did.
What?
We really did resolve. Jerry brought the question up of who owns those pads, and should we be putting the pads in, or should first student be putting the pads in? And
Oh, I can get involved in this a little more. One of the reasons we're putting the pads in is because the first responders that were at the meeting, there is a 25-foot setback where you can't idle cars or anything like that. They want that denoted in an area, like sprayed, paint down and saying you can't park and idle within this area. And with the stone there, we really can't do it. So that's one of the reasons we'd like to do it. We own the fueling stations now, and we are responsible for the area. We're always having issues where we're bringing, I should say annually, we bring stone in because the stone washes away and everything else. This is going to make it very consistent, where we have to pull up on a very level space to fuel up the propane buses. So I strongly recommend that we do this so that we maintain the space properly. But it is our responsibility, it is not for students.
So the one on the understand is cameras?
the cameras, the two places, and again, security is not under my umbrella. And I'm working with Bill Rick, and we're looking at, and I have another slide coming up about maintaining cameras throughout the district, because we went from what is a handful of cameras to over 300 cameras when we made all of our security changes throughout the district. Now that we've done that, we also have to look at maintaining all of those cameras. And there are those number of cameras at each one of those high schools that are still the analog cameras, that while they're cameras and they are deterrents, when you look at the image of a digital camera versus an analog, and you need information, you're likely to get good information from digital. The cameras are good, they still function, but they get tired, so you need to consider replacement of those cameras at some point. And I do have a slide relative to security, a single slide, to talk a little bit about that. These were the slides that were incorporated in Bob's presentation, so we'll just breeze through those. Metal pole building construction, I was asked to bring this tonight just to show you where we are with it, some of the discussions that we had in the past, to whatever level we had those, and they were minimal, admittedly, but we did have some brief discussions about it. South, we were at one point considering 2 buildings, or at least proposed 2 buildings, because we would use one for our equipment and another for potential kind of centralized storage for storage space, even if it were desks or whatever it would be within that space, not allocated for grounds. And then at north, a building for grounds as well. There's a large quantity of equipment that is stored either outdoors or in sea boxes, and I've provided a list of some of that equipment. That's not the complete list. I have a couple of photos of some of the things that are stored outside. These are things that would be great. The nice batwing mowers, the snow throwers, the tractors. Some that would be really nice to have space inside. We just can't, find a home for it right now.
Have you toured KDK yet?
No.
Not been able to.
Robert and I met with KDK not until after the new year, and then even so, our access to KDK wouldn't be such that it would facilitate this type of equipment. I can tell you that based on our initial discussions.
That's
we can
correct.
talk more about that later.
They have not taken ownership of it yet, or taken occupancy of it yet. In fact, Bob, you were just sending some fax information today to their CEO. So we're probably looking at right after the start of the new year for us to be able to get in. And I think I sent it out previously that we would invite the full board to be part of that tour with us as well, whenever we do that.
So at South, the location, and assume it would be 1, not 2. You can see some of the C boxes that we have up there. We have a series of boxes, but it would be one of those 2 white squares. At north, again, over where an existing small masonry building is now, it's not very functional. It's a very small square building. The budget for these pre-engineered metal buildings, basically per school, a 3,000 square foot building at $110 a square foot is about $330,000. The site prep that we're showing on here for now is $200,000, $100,000 per site. That would be some of the clearing to tuck them in where they need to be, getting ready for the foundations for the buildings. And then the fees, permit, and contingency. So while the number is almost 1.1, about 40% of that is things other than the buildings themselves.
How much is the equipment worth that we're storing?
Oh, boy. I think I'm prepared to.
What was that question?
How much is the equipment that we're storing? It's unfortunate.
Well, for example, we
It's,
just.
$600,000 we stored $1 million.
Well, no, what I would say is we just purchased two Exmark batwing mowers
Right.
that were $60,000 each.
Right.
It's $120,000 in mowers, just two mowers that are being stored in a C box because we don't have room for them in a building. This would be a great place to be able to pull them in at the end of the day.
This is appreciably more than I had anticipated, but as you and I discussed, I was not thinking that these would be buildings with, I was just thinking these were storage buildings, kind of like barns. Your vision is different than mine.
My vision was something more, first of all, where they live. South, not as much as north, but north is certainly an area that's more prominent. So yeah, I was thinking something that had at least a small masonry base, prefabricated metal buildings like a Butler building, a company that actually makes, you tell them you want a 60 by 50 building, they prefabricate all the pieces like an erector set, it comes out, they build. In saying that, you build a masonry wall up to a certain point, finish the metal panels so that you have some durability and sustainability for the building, a concrete slab. And a space that in the winter, if the guys needed another place to pull equipment to take apart to work on, they can take it apart, spread it out, and use it for that function as well.
I have to tell you, I think, Rick, I think the outbuilding at South was originally $180,000, and we put it up for $60,000 because we removed a lot of the features that, I don't think there's power in that building.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that's just a shell. Remember switching out the outbuilding, which is the utility building?
For athletics over there.
What?
It's a building for athletics.
Right.
What is that 30 September 14 referring to?
That was that's when this budget, so this was originally prepared. So that's the budget, today that budget still holds.
Oh, okay, so
I'm not saying that budget isn't accurate today, I'm saying that's just when it was originally.
okay, so nothing had to be increased since the year.
No, I think I checked with Butler and said, hey, your numbers still seem reasonable, so.
Yes, yeah, I was thinking this building, and again, you and I talked about this. I asked you again to explore what the parking situation is at that space at South, because I don't know if that parking is our choice or whether it was the parking was required for a number of spaces.
Absolutely good in Northampton, and you touch base with them and say, hey, it's something we're considering, would this be problematic?
Because my whole question, as I said, was I was thinking we'd be putting a whole barn over a parking lot, and that was about it.
Yeah.
We have.
This would be a little harder up here, Jerry, because we would have to carve a little bit of space out instead of building it. Even at north, there is some paving here, but we would have to.
Doug, on the south, I was thinking he would be building the enclosure over the parking lot.
In the middle, like over the middle of.
Making the parking lot the base of the property.
Then we have to put doors on both sides.
I don't really care, that's fine, but I was thinking that it would be a covered parking lot for the equipment. The equipment that's there would be where it is. Figure it would now have a shed over it. That was
generally still put a slab in no matter what.
So you say.
But until somebody asked if there was equipment outside, this wasn't even on his top priority list. So for another $1 million, as we turn down projects and things that we need in this district every single day, this is another $1 million. I'm not saying covering expensive equipment isn't a good idea. I'm just saying there has to be some priority order of what we're gonna spend money on. We're willing to spend $1 million here, but we're not willing to spend $3 million on kindergarten, like.
Every year.
Yeah, you say that, except since I've been sitting here tonight, there's been 15 presentations about facilities needing money in the next 10 years. So they need money every year. They need money every year too, Jim. They're recurring.
I understand that, and you're looking at, just so we're clear, you're looking at $1 million here. And clearly, anybody who would be listening to my point is, this is more than I had anticipated, because I think it includes much more than I had anticipated. I was looking, if I could get away with a carport, it would be a carport. That was what I was looking for, that it had sides that go to the floor.
But it's not
Okay.
a reasonable thing to say, we have expensive equipment, we need to cover it.
I got you.
know, But it's, we have to decide what our priorities gonna be, because we can't do everything, even if we want to.
So Doug, is there a way to see what the offset is? Because we lose life of this equipment as it sits outside. There's no doubt about that. You can't adequately cover it. And the equipment's expensive. So is there a way to see what the return would be on this? Or what the savings would be? I'm again asking for more information.
I hear what you're saying. I'm sure, so what you're saying is if the anticipated life was 15 years or 5,000 hours on a piece of equipment, what kind of life is lost of that equipment by keeping it outside?
That's
I don't know if I can
exactly.
answer that.
I can't imagine that that's not out there. There's nothing that we can think of that.
How do I know? I mean, how do I know how much it rains, how much it snows if there's a tarp on it, if there's not a tarp on it? I mean, I don't know how.
I'm
I
willing to
can
bet
get
that if we have a John Deere, whatever, John Deere probably has that information.
Yeah, from an industry standpoint.
Yeah, right. Yeah, 'cause we
I can
can't-
certainly see it. I don't know that I can put a lot of credence in the answers like that, but I can try to find information on how much weather affects the life of equipment, and what value that is.
It's worth a look, as is Jerry's commentary around, what's an alternative to this? Because ultimately, it does come down to exactly what Wendy is talking about, where we have all these needs, limited money, and these needs cut across a wide swath, right? From human resources to instructional stuff to capital stuff, and ultimately we need to take all these different puzzle pieces and have them fit together, and we're not going to be able to afford every single piece that's out there. So it's not a function of setting priorities within capital or within this, or it's a matter of the entire puzzle fitting together.
Or you've been saying there's $1 million for capital. Do you say we do pole barns, or do we put $1 million aside for second year summer projects? Like, say the $1 million is there for capital, where would you spend it?
Well, but what I'm trying to say is, there's value in replacing a roof or windows or what have you, and there's also value in saving our equipment. So for us not to have to buy the same piece of $60,000 equipment in 10 years instead of it being 20.
Right, but you might need to do a roof, and you have the money saved towards that, or some of it, or you had something for equipment. That's what I'm saying. I don't know how you.
That's right.
If the squirrels, I mean, I can't predict if the squirrel's gonna crawl into a motor and like chew wires. Like, how do I know that? So if the squirrel decides over the winter to build a nest in a mower and chew the wire
Nobody's
harness,
got you for guarantee.
I can't tell you, so that cost is $3,000 to fix.
But for me, I mean, I don't know anything about this. So I don't know why I even had any thought about it, but in my mind, I didn't think we'd be talking about $1 million.
Mhm.
I just envisioned that whatever
We can certainly look at
the
what other
solution was would
alternatives
be
are out
far
there.
less than that.
Yeah.
That's
We can see what other
Well,
alternatives.
why two locations? Is that necessary to have 3 barns in 2 locations? Or can
Well,
you do
No, he's only
one
doing
lo-
one in each.
Because we keep certain equipment at one site, so we're not with the, I mean, I could look at the cost of taking a trailer and gas and moving equipment back and forth on a daily basis, or keeping equipment at the
I
site.
get it, that it's more convenient, but I'm just wondering, when we're
Especially
talking.
with 6 ground gas, it is.
Well, you have, by example,
I'll
you have
I'll
the,
just keep my comments to myself.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm done, it's all right.
We have a garage for equipment over on, Newtown. That's where the kid drove into a few years ago. Right? The kid taking driver ed with her dad, drove across the parking lot, ran into our outbuilding, which is a garage. We have an outside garage there. That houses that lawn equipment, does it not?
Town,
Elementary
we have a small,
garage.
Yeah.
And that's where we house that,
correct.
those grounds equipment.
Right, we keep some things there. We actually have a small garage at Holland Middle School. Where we
Interior of the
have
building.
some fueling and we have some, equipment for that site.
Right.
So
So some of our large properties do have limited one mower space.
limited, so
They
we
have
asked
one mower.
on the New Holland,
Go ahead, no, I can wait.
we asked on the New Holland Middle School to, off of one of the mechanical spaces, try to provide us with a similar space that we had, 300 square feet, something, so we could continue to keep the equipment there and not have to move it back and forth.
Blowers,
And the same for
mower.
Newtown.
Just kind of thinking out loud, we're doing all this work at Newtown Middle. Newtown Middle is arguably between south and north. Why, what if we built one large building on that site that we're already developing at Newtown Middle?
I'd have to see where that building would live. I'm not trying to be difficult, but from an approval standpoint, probably wouldn't want to do it now because it adds impervious surface, it changes the plans that are being approved. So that part would be a challenge.
Well, I guess, and I
Master
don't know,
planning wise, possibly.
but at south or at north, is one piece of equipment in constant use there, meaning that it would just be a matter of, that's my question, which is, am I losing the time just moving it back and forth? When if it's used 5 days a week, because that's how many days, and it's used 8 hours a day in a period of time, then that's just setup cost. I lose an hour of an employee or 2 hours getting it there, getting it back each day, so that's.
Well, I don't want to belabor this, but do you have people mowing at south and north the same day, at the same time?
Yeah.
Are you using, yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
We actually have a person at South who's pretty much stationed there to take care of South, and he uses the equipment that's there to maintain it. We have another person who's assigned to work. The two high schools require.
I just find it hard to believe it takes 5 days to cut the grass at high school.
It's not the cutting, it's the edging.
I will tell you that it's very difficult to take care of almost 100 acres of land. And by the time you finish mowing where you started, it's already, you're constantly, and he's also preparing fields and doing other things. It's not just mowing lawns, so.
Sheep.
I actually have 3 suggestions, but one of them you probably should never.
Wood beams.
No, not wood beams, but they're called high bar structures. The Air Force used them. They were developed at the University of Tennessee or Kentucky, and they're extremely stable, very strong, and very very lightweight. And they can either be anchored or freestanding. They're very stable in bad weather, storms, snow, and so forth. Second one is an approach that has been taken in several municipalities, including Northampton, in their retention basins, so that they're not cutting the grass in detention basins anymore. They let them grow naturally, and so they've eliminated that problem. And the third thing is, I don't know if our people are working shifts, but if they're mowing constantly, you could set it up so that they're mowing all night long and doing the field preparation during the day, and you'd only need one place for maintenance. You have a central maintenance facility for upkeep.
We actually, let me answer one part of that, which is the fields. If you go to Holland Middle School, you'll see, we still do that with the.
We do the meadows plantings.
Yeah, we have a meadows. We're.
It's one school.
I know, no, but
No,
because
there
the
are
properties
meadows
are
in
not
other
used.
places.
Yeah, but you could expand them.
Right.
So
And we work
then you
on
eliminate-
meadow seeds, and we do work on it.
Yeah.
That's something that we have.
Yeah, but then you eliminate the need for mowing.
I agree.
And chemicals.
As you get sheep.
That's what I said before. That's what I said before.
Yeah, I missed it.
Chains and stakes are
That wasn't bad.
a lot cheaper than gator bombs.
We don't need changes.
Yeah, if you're putting sheep at Holland Middle, they're not coming to my place. I used to have to haul that crap.
These babies.
And then we serve mutton.
So we talked about security and we talked about north, and we talked about south, the number of analog cameras that are at those two locations. All the other cameras are in pretty good shape throughout the district. We have about 350 cameras now in place since we've done the security upgrades. We should look at approximately 10% of those cameras being replaced annually as we move forward. And that doesn't mean we throw them away. We use them to replace some other cameras that might be more tired. We work with exchanges. But we have to develop some sort of plan for security moving forward now that we have all of this stuff in place. So I'll come back to you at another time and we'll talk more about how that looks. It's something we need to consider down the road. Master planning, routine maintenance, the book has been distributed. The capital projects, we talked about a 5-year plan tonight. The modulars are planned to be removed next summer. The action plan for the district storage challenge is after January, as we discussed, and Robert and I will be in touch to get the board through that facility. Actually talking about a 10,000 square foot kind of space for us to use over there, if that happens. That's what he was tentatively talking
Yeah,
about.
that was his verbal indication. The written agreement talks about 6,000 square feet, but I haven't seen it. I don't think you've been in there either. Doug. So they got these basic, these warehouse type.
Big high-bay spaces.
And so he's estimating that at 10,000 square feet.
So, as we talked about, early planning for redistricting in elementary school reduction or potential reduction, probably should say. Schematic floor plans, I have in here for Hillcrest and Richboro, which we have seen, I believe that's been. No, you haven't seen them at all yet. Okay, so I have those here, schematic project budget and considerations, preliminary milestone schedule, and then some preliminary investigations and testing that if we're considering this at all, and again, this is only if you're considering this, we need to talk about some preliminary work that would have to be performed prior to the onset of winter by the civil engineer to make sure that we're in good shape to move these projects forward, if that's the ultimate decision of the board. So at Hillcrest Elementary School, again, very crude drawing, Holland Middle School over here, basically the connection across the two wings exactly like Newtown Elementary School has today. Basically, these two buildings are the same building that we have at Newtown Elementary School. The only difference is Newtown has the 10 classroom addition across the back. These two are candidates for the same thing. And there's the same building again at Richboro Elementary School, again, 10 classroom addition, connecting those two classroom wings. The budget, which we talked about, $6.25 million. The way that this was developed, in general, to give you some ideas so you understand, about 16,000 square foot addition at $250 a square foot. Generally, we're budgeting at $225. I looked at this, it's a smaller building, it's a small addition, $250, 16,000 square feet, and a grossing factor for corridors and storage spaces and other things that come with it. You can't just look at 10 classrooms at 9,000 square feet and say it's 9,000, or 900 square feet times 10 and say it's 9,000. You have to put the hallways in and the other spaces. Site work allowance of $750,000 on top of it, which assumes minor site improvements. It assumes conventional footings. It assumes some connecting sidewalks and things like that. Mechanical space allowance of $250,000 to get us from the existing boiler room down the hallway to serve the existing or the new addition. And if a boiler had to be switched out, would facilitate the boiler as well to serve that building. Environmental contractor is not required. This building is from 1989. There are no asbestos-containing materials here. So the estimated construction cost is $5 million. Site survey, moving into soft cost is included, asbestos consultants not required. Geotechnical investigations are considered, builder's risk is considered, the architect's fee along with the civil engineer are all considered in this project. Construction management fees, I have fees in here if we were to do this, to bring in someone to assist in managing. Legal costs are also included, sanitary tap-in fees and allowance, approvals and permits, power costs for service, for new service for phones, power, gas, computer, already have them in place, so they're not required. Utilities, construction, testing, adjusting and balancing of the mechanical system, printing, and contingency are in the number. Movable furniture, fixtures, and equipment, there's a $50,000 allowance for that if the principal's needed in each building to purchase some furniture or fixtures. For those, we have some minimal allowance for it. Financing is not included, so it's $6.25 million minus financing. These would not be reimbursable projects, these would be non-reimbursable, so there would be no planning reimbursement.
New construction?
It's new construction, but these buildings will likely need to be renovated, certainly within the next 15 years. And once, 20 years, and you trigger a 20-year rule with planning comment, if you were to go for reimbursement for the $6 million, and within the next 20, you want to renovate the rest and want to get reimbursed for a bigger project, you would forego your reimbursement for the rest.
You're
So-
assuming they'll be that kind of 20 years.
I'm assuming that we're gonna touch these buildings within 20 years.
And they'll still be that kind of
For
reimbursement.
major renovation.
Well, I'm assuming oh yeah. Yeah. That was in the cover letter when I issued the book.
Do we just say it's a different building and attach it to an existing building?
Don't tell them.
No? There are considerations because again, this is the first shot at a budget for a building that we've just asked about. We've done no site studies, I've had no engineers through the building, certainly have ideas of what the cost for this will be. It's very realistic numbers, but it's based upon the 16,000 square foot addition as shown on the plans. The geotechnical investigations are something I would want to do to see what the footing, what the soils types are to make sure they are conventional type footings that I assume they would be. We don't include the export or import of engineered fill if for any reason the soils conditions aren't suitable. Generally they are, but now that Holland is right next door to Hillcrest, it makes me nervous, so I want to see. Mechanical engineer would come in and look at the capacities of the utilities to serve the addition. It doesn't include all new boilers, all new chillers, a whole new electrical service in the existing building to facilitate the new. This assumes we can expand what we have in place, which I think we reasonably could, since it's from 1989, not the 1950s or 60s building, which would generally be more challenging. Upgrades to the existing building aren't included, so this doesn't touch anything in the existing building. This is just the addition and going down the hallway to the boiler.
And you don't think this triggers any ADA? If those buildings are not ADA compliant in some aspect, you don't think? this
Not
will trigger-
entirely ADA compliant.
You don't think, will this trigger?
We're, talking to the architect, we're thinking likely not, but we have to go talk to the township and have those conversations. So those are all things that we need to do. Assumes the use of fire separation to separate the new construction from the existing building. So it doesn't assume we're gonna go through the whole building and put fire protection throughout the whole street. No off-site improvements are included in the estimate. So if you go to the township and they want you to do all sorts of crazy things, improvement down the street, you gotta run sidewalks from east to fifth to here if you wanna do this. That's not in here, that's something we have to look at. As we know, the land development process can always add to the cost. We don't know what could be asked for, but I think that Northampton has been reasonable and it would be for these, and we have to get accomplished. And it's based on lump sum, square foot, and allowances, so a detailed budget will be provided once we do those investigations. So, if we're looking, and if there's a need, and again, I'm just answering questions based upon the need for, or the current charge to redistrict in 17-18. With that being said, if there's a consideration by the board to potentially close a school or two schools, which I don't know, but this is just giving you the information needed to make those decisions. The preliminary survey and testing is weather dependent, a portion of it. So I would come to you on the 19th next week and say, hey, we would need to spend this amount of money to do some preliminary testing, even before you make a decision to bring the entire team on board, so that if you do decide in January to bring the team on board, the things that were weather dependent are addressed prior to. Because if you say, we're waiting until January, we're gonna bring the team on, and they can do their testing then, and if the grounds have froze, or we have any blanket of snow, and they can't look at the topography, and they can't do infiltration testing, things that are required to document, things that are required to go to the conservation district for approvals, we would be